What if Bella became Damon's friend? Part 2. Vervain. I tried to pretend I wasn't sure what she was talking about, but my trembling fingers told otherwise. She smirked, a flash of mischief in her eyes as she placed a croissant on her plate in an innocent manner as she answered me. I am maybe old, blind in one eye, but I am not stupid. Her words made me feel slightly guilty, but for now I needed to find out her objectives. Kill me, use me. What was her motive? And if she knew, why did she invite me in? What to do now? I could use the tell anyone and I'll kill you route, or I could continue with the you a crazy old woman route. I don't know what you talking about. Sitting down and placing the vervain coffee purposefully on the table. Oh, come of it, you vampires are so stubborn, she mocked me, staring me down from the opposite side of the table. So she knew about vampires, and she also knew I was half a vampire. I really denial became an instinct. Do you really want to play this game? We both know how the story ends, so why not skip a few chapters? She bit into the croissant gleefully as she watched me in my conflicted state. With a sigh, I rubbed my temples and then set my hands down on the table, joining my fingers. How did you know? There was no point in the denial route with her certain confidence. She hadn't tried to kill me, so that should count for something. Lived in Mystic Falls for a long while. My first test was not inviting you in, she elaborated, and I did a mental awe from the explanation. Second test was the vervain. You hesitated, she added with ease, continuing to eat, get food and drunk her coffee. You were diabolical, showing that I was impressed. She fitted all the clues together, and in a very discreet way, may I add. No, just observant, she smiled and then stood up to grab the other coffee pot. She walked back down to sit and pushed the coffee pot towards me. It also helps that I am a witch, she added casually. You a witch? She placed a hovering palm above the. Now you know. What are you planning on doing? There must be something she wants, or why else could she have tricked me to find out the truth? Did she want me to turn her? Nothing, she leaned back casually. I paused for a moment, surprised by her answer. You don't want anything? She shook her head, taking a sip of coffee. Immortality. Maybe that would spark her interest, but no such luck, as she shook her head again. I don't want anything from you, she told me, and I could detect only honesty from her tone and her eyes. Like I said before, it get lonely and it's nice to have someone around, she answered truthfully. I knew one thing, I could trust her. Right now I really needed someone to just talk to and someone to tell me it'd be okay. I needed a friend. I am part witch too, revealing myself to her so she knew she could trust me too. She was surprised by this and she leaned forward in interest. Taking the sugar, I poured it on the table and then placed a palm over the grains, indulging at the powerful surge that ran through me. It seemed stronger than before, and within a second, the grains were now floating, causing Mrs. Flowers to gasp. How? You a vampire? She exclaimed, staring at me wide-eyed. And part witch? I don't understand. That's against the. I know. I was born as a full witch but was forced blood and died, turning me into a vampire. Well, half vampire. Giving a weakened smile. I could see the question in her eyes. I should have died, but I always knew there's a reason I was saved by the witches. What reason is that? She asked, fully interested in my messed up life story. To help someone, a human. My words only created more confusion, and she sat back on the chair contemplating over my revelation before she questioned, could you elaborate? I knew I could trust her, and it wasn't fair for me to live in her home and be a stranger. It would be wise for me to keep my mouth shut, but when did I ever say I was wise? Besides, numbers count in a battle, and maybe she'll help me. A doppelganger. BPOV. I'd spent the rest of the afternoon with Mrs. Flowers in her garden, which was absolutely beautiful. She taught me of all the different herbs and plants that can protect a witch's identity and mind. She told me about her childhood and how she met her husband in Mystic Falls. They'd fallen in love and wanted to have children, but she couldn't. I'd cried at that piece of information because she'd been alone for so long and she couldn't have children. In return for her trust, I told her everything. From the original family to Edward and Damon. She'd tried to hold me, but I'd refuses her embrace because I knew it would make me feel worse, and I'd end up crying over two fucked up assholes. Later on I'd helped her with lunch and we ended up having lasagna, but I knew I needed to feed soon. The decision was clear when I began to notice how Mrs. Flowers' vein was noticeable from 3 feet away, or how tempting her blood smelt. I might go tonight, it would be best if I did. Not only was I noticing the blood but I'd taking into account that I hadn't had visions for a while and maybe my mental shield would break down, allowing Alice to see where I was. Not only was lack of blood making me crave it but it was tiring me out both physically and mentally. I was planning on staying with her some more but when it reached 9 and we spent 3 hours talking about spells and looking at each other's grimoire she sent me to bed. Saying I looked tired so with a mock glare, I was making my way up to the room but she followed soon after. It was so amazing to meet another witch who had now become my friend, probably my only friend. No offended intended towards Caroline and Bonnie but they aren't my friends that they re Elena's first and would probably side with her no matter what. Being around them would mean being around Elena and I couldn't do that not when images of my fingers around her throat invaded my mind. Once I was in my new room. I looked down at the duffel bag remembering that I hadn't unpacked but now that I knew what a wonderful yet lonely woman Mrs. Flowers was I wanted to stay. I needed her just as she needed me. Bending down on the floor next to my bag, I rifled through it but froze when the wind blew and an all well-known scent assaulted my nose. Turning around, I looked into his dark eyes that gazed down at me. Too many vague emotions were sifting through his eyes so I couldn't make out what he was thinking or feeling. Surprise hit me when he slumped down before me looking worn out and defeated as he kneeled before me. Seeing him again just reminded me of what he did. All I could feel was pain. Pain crippled me with the sight of him but I was somehow impressed he found me but that feeling was crushed by the anguish that threatened to overwhelm me as the hollowness of my heart returned draining the happiness I felt when I was with Mrs. Flowers. Words failed me and I choked on my breath. Seeing him again brought all these conflicting emotions that I remained frozen. Damon. BPOV. Didn't he think you were the flowery type, he whispered to me. My mouth remained shut as I continued to stare at him with my lips gaping. Isabel, he called to me softly, reaching a hand out but I instinctively moved back in fear of what his touch would do. My back hit the bed and I was grateful when he dropped his hand, a dead look in his grave eyes. Please say Somethy, he didn't get to finish that because I stood from the floor and rushed to the door, opening it slightly but he too was alert because he came from behind me and pushed the half-opened door closed. Don't run, he instructed in a dark voice, his lips were so close to my ear, the heat radiated from his lips tickling my neck. His scent affected me, his closeness ignited the usual wanting. My fingers balled up into fists on the door in attempt to prevent myself from grabbing him. He pressed himself closer to me, his body heat contrasted with the wetted clothes that were now drenching mine. Every contort perfection of his shaped body was molded onto my back and my fingers itches to turn around and kiss him but I fought it with the recurring images of them kissing. The images were enough to tighten my chest and I panicked trying to open the door again but he pushed it firmly. Why do you always run? He shouted at me and his words triggered the rage I hadn't wanted to release. Turning around, I looked at him but then sadness crept up when looking into his empty eyes, which was why I answered pathetically. Because you constantly pushing me away. His face fell as if my words had crushed him. Another apprehensive look colored his face as he stared at me. His hands dropped as he pleaded for me to not attempt escape as he searched for an answer. You always running from me. 90 years ago. Remember that. We were happy, weren't we? His brows furrowed with uncertainty but he was right. We were happy until after. Why did you leave? He pleaded for the answer and I knew this was something that had bothered him for a while. Why did I leave? Why? How could he not know what pushed me away? How dare he ask? Thinking about that night brought tears to my eyes like this moment as I stared into his clueless face. You don't remember? He didn't have to answer because I already knew. Remember what? He looked lost for words. Nothing came to mind as to what made me leave all those years ago and my lips spoke reminding him of his mistake. Flashback. July 1921. After the concert, we spent a few hours in the park and played into the fountain. We became soaked so we trudged back him after the police bite us. We then ran back to Damon's place. I'd been taking off my dress and he walked in on me so one thing led to another and here we were. This is very bad of us, I whispered against his lips for one last kiss before allowing my heart rate to calm down. We just finished yet another round of sex but this time it was different. I tried to show him I loved him with every tender kiss and light touch. I'd hoped the desperate hold on him would show him how much I needed him. Which makes it even more exhilarating, he always had something to say back at me as he captured my lips once more before I rolled off him but kept my head gently placed on his chest, hearing the loud thump of the heartbeat. He began to stroke the strands of my hair with a touch as light as a feather. Closing my eyes, I reveled in his touch. Eventually, his touches stopped and his heartbeat had slowed to a calming thud. Raising my head to look at him, I found he'd fallen into a deep sleep. His eyelashes grazed his cheeks and lazy wisps of his raven black hair fell to his forehead. Gently, I reached up to move them from his face before laying back down and pulling the covers onto us. "Good night, Damon," I breathed. He rolled us over so he was spooning me again. His arms tightened around me and his nose buried itself in my hair. Everything changed in that second, my heart shattering into a million pieces with his next words. "Good night, Catherine." End of flashback. The reminder froze him in his shock and I watched as the weight of the truth swamped him and he looked back up at me wide-eyed. He knew I wouldn't lie about something like this. "Who am I to you?" The words were whisper when remembering Mrs. Flowers was still asleep. "Isabel IMS." He began to apologize but I shook my head in refusal as I pushed past him. "You're always full of sorries," I cried, feeling the crushing pain in my chest. "I understand, Damon, I understand." Really, my words were apparently causing him more pain as more creases crowded his forehead and I longed to gently smooth them away. "I understand your love for Catherine. I understand your new love for Elena," but my shoulders slumped for the amount of strain I was putting on myself. I was feeling drained, my limbs seemed to lack strength and withered away. The words were bitter on my tongue, burning my throat. "I understand." It felt forceful to look at him so I looked up at the ceiling, feeling lost under his gaze as well as exposed, so I wrapped my arms around my torso. "What I don't understand, I guess I just thought." "Isabel," he whispered so quietly, I snapped my head back down to lock eyes with him. "I just trusted that you had some respect for me as a friend." Pausing as I swallowed down the bile that threatened to rise. The anguish was crippling and I could feel myself wavering. "To not hurt me like you did." The tears were helplessly falling now as I turned away from him, not wanting him to witness how broken I was. Looking out the window, sudden realization hit me so I blinked back the tears and spun around to look at him. "How did you get in?" Crossing my arms over my chest in attempts to keep my calm. "I've met with the owner a while back." His pained voice was hoarse and as much as I wanted to shout at him, scream at him and fight back for my diminished dignity, I kept my calm knowing it would be something I'd regret later. "You know Mrs. Flowers?" Confusion set in as Mrs. Flowers hadn't mentioned anything about Damon. "No, I knew her husband," he answered casually, but a frightening smirk graced his lips and I feared the worst. How did you know him?" "He was bait," Damon told me, and I scrunched up my face because that was vital information that Mrs. Flowers had chosen to miss out. My thoughts then diverted to what Damon had said. He'd called him bait. "How did you know him?" I already knew the answer to that. It was written all over his triumphant smirk. He'd killed him. Maybe that's why he was able to get in. Mrs. Flowers had said he was a human caught up in a world that wasn't his own. I hadn't known what she meant then, but now I knew. "I needed Mrs. Flowers for something a while back." His voice had softened, becoming less confident, and something flashed in his eyes, but it snuck away as quick as it came. "But that doesn't matter, right?" It wasn't making sense why Mrs. Flowers had hidden the fact that she knew Damon from me. "What did you need her for?" Ignoring whatever he was saying because I knew he was trying to pass it off. The dreading feeling crept up on my mind as to his association with Mrs. Flowers was. What spell did Damon need in the past? What had we wanted to do? Why a witch? "We don't need to." He was deflecting again. "I think we do," glaring at his cowardly form. "Can't we just talk about before?" His eyes held his desperation for me to let it go, and it was a low blow for him to even mention what happened before. "Why did you need from her?" The answer was already known to me, but I wanted him to say it for some reason. I needed to hear it. "Isabel." Impatience got the better of me, causing me to shout at him. "I already know what you're gonna say, so you might as well say it." It was becoming infuriating playing around in circles in this conversation. He remained silent, looking down to the ground and rubbing at the back of his neck, reflecting his nervousness. "Just say it, Damon." This time my heartbeat had stilled as the only sound was of his following words. "I wanted her to open the tomb." There was one thing I was certain about: I would never be Catherine enough for him. BPOV. Without another word, I acted on instincts which told me it was a good idea to use all my rage to push Damon crashing out the window. It worked because ID caught him off guard and I watched in shock at my lack of control around him, which caused me to purposefully hurt him. Rushing to the window, I watched his flailing arms and how the crystal shards of glass fell with him as he landed on the ground with a loud thud on the ground. His eyes were wide in shock from my actions and I almost dropped the stiff mask I was placing, but instead made my glare more menacing. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Quickly I muttered the spell and felt the shield protect the house. He brushed himself off angrily, ready to leap back, but I wagged my finger at him with an accomplished smirk. Don't try coming in again. I've spell locked it. It was a low whisper but loud enough for him to hear it. Just stay away from me for a while. It was supposed to sound confident but I simply sounded weak. I just did have the heart anymore. Issa, I am sorry. Elena kissed me. He began to excuse himself but we both knew it wouldn't work this time. Didn't seem like you put up so much of a fight? He bowed his head in shame, not muttering a word, but his actions spoke loud and clear. You can keep blaming other people. This is all on you again. He remained quiet, pinging the bridge of his nose in frustration as he thought of what to say next. If you care about me like you say you do, you'll leave. No, if I care like I say I do, I'll stay and fight. He tried, pleading in his eyes, but I kept mine hardened, not wanting to show him my weakness again. I am tired, not wanting to wish him a good night but simply wanting to leave this conversation, but Damon wouldn't take it as he fought again for me to stay. Issa, please. I hesitated for a second and almost relented, wanting to stay with the strong draw I felt that pulled me towards him. Goodbye, Damon. My limbs were weakening with the longer I stayed, so I turned around, leaving him there. DPOV. Something about that goodbye scared me. I felt like I'd lost her forever, but I would not be giving up on her. Not on Isabel. ELPOV. I'd gone home because the shadowed Salvatore house looked menacing and I'd tried to sleep but hadn't been able to, so instead I watched as night passed and the day rose while attempting to try and call Stefan, but I just felt worse that his phone kept on ringing, which meant that he knew it was me but wouldn't answer. Knock knock. Caroline's voice came from the other side of the door before opening and looking surprised to see me, probably because I was still in yesterday's clothes. What's wrong? She asked, already knowing that something wasn't right. Panic set in but the guilt conquered to hide it from one of my best friends. Caroline. My eyes dropped expectantly to the floor but decided to own up to my mistake by looking up as I stammered over the dark revelation. I did something bad, something really bad. Worry colored her face and she entered the room with her rare but genuine serious face, then slowly closed the door behind her before sitting next to me on the bed. What is it? She got really worried now. I should just spit it out like a band-aid, which was exactly what I did. I kissed Damon and now Isabel found out and she's run away, and I told Stefan and he isn't answering my calls. My rambling caused her to shoot up from the bed and cross her arms over her chest as she snarled at me. I hope I don't have to tell you how stupid you are. Her words stung, but that was what I needed, someone to tell me how dangerous the game I was playing was. I couldn't do this. I loved Stefan. I loved him so much and that would never change, and Damon was just Damon. I know. Caroline. Tears prickled my eyes and she sighed, seeing that I was sorry, but I needed her to be angry to understand or feel sorry for me. I had just ruined a perfectly good couple and broken an innocent person's heart. Poor Isabel. How could I ever make it up to her? Caroline hesitantly sat back down next to me with her fingers laced together tightly. What were you thinking? Her voice was soft as she witnessed my falling tears. Shaking my head, I tried to understand what had made me do that. What was going on in my mind to cause me to kiss him? I don't know, answering half truthfully because I couldn't comprehend it either. Yes you do, Caroline urged me, her eyes penetrating mine as she waited for the truth. Thinking back to Damon, my thoughts flashed to the newcomer that was Isabel. Truth was, for some reason I came to dislike her, which didn't make sense seeing as she was so amazing he was when sorting things out, especially going through all the trouble of organizing Damon a birthday, or how brave she was with a wolf bite that could kill her. How great and loving she was, although there were some secrets she hid. Then again, didn't we all have secrets? It was great how Damon acted around her. That's what bothered me, how Damon changed around her, how scared he'd been to think he'd lose her. He'd shown his humanity because of her, and something in me didn't like that. A part of me wanted me to be the one to elicit those emotions. When he'd snapped Jeremy's neck, I'd promised myself there was absolutely no good in him, but I was so wrong. I don't know, I guess I was kinda jealous, I replied lamely with my head hung low. Rivaling thoughts fought in my mind. Isabel didn't deserve this, neither did Stefan. That's an understatement. Caroline rolled her eyes at me then sighed. So Stefan and Izzy know. In reply I gave a nod, words escaping me. Do you know where they are? She asked, but I just shook my head, tucking my hair behind my ear to look at her. Do you love Damon? She asked fearlessly. Classic fearless, not discreet Caroline. I don't know, no I don't I don't love Damon. My stuttering made me sound less convincing. Was he a good kisser? She asked animatedly. I was glad she'd let my answer go, but I was upset with her follow-up question. Unsure how to answer that without any more follow-up questions, I simply answered I love Stefan, hoping she got the message that I wasn't going to answer her question. What are you doing, Elena? She was angry with me still, but I could see she was also trying to understand. Trying to be a good friend. Slumping my shoulders and deep breathing, I answered truthfully I don't know. BPOV. Last night I'd asked Damon to leave, but he decided to ignore me. Instead he camped on the roof. He thought I didn't know, but I was aware, but I didn't do anything. Instead I went to sleep, forcing the slumber to welcome me in the peace of the dreams. And I did have a dream, well, a memory, a human memory. With Mama, Papa and my broth. Shouldn't think about that. Not today. Not ever. Today would be different. I would be different. Not the average damsel in distress, which was the main reason why today I woke up with a grin on my face, reason being because I wasn't going to let some guy ruin the rest of my existence. I would be myself again, strong and independent. There was only one way to get through, helping Elena, and the solution was always there. I just never really acknowledged it. It was as easy as breathing and the best thing for everyone. My switch was on and it wasn't turning off anytime soon. It was the only way I could stand being around this town. There was no point in putting up the charade of being human. I should have given it up a long time ago, because that wasn't who I was. I wasn't human. I was a vampire, a monster and nothing more. It was about time I reminded people of that. Isabel, are you up? Mrs. Flower's voice came from the other end of the door in a light, cheery tone, interrupting my thoughts. Yes, it's me. The grin didn't leave my face. I am about to make some breakfast, dear, if you'd like some. She sounded hopeful. Her voice triggered yesterday's memories of what Damon had said, so ignoring her words, I walked towards the door and opened it to reveal Mrs. Flowers. The words flew out of my mouth before I had time to process them in my mind. Why didn't you tell me about Damon? Her facial expression fell with my question, and I felt guilty for being the one to ruin her happy mood. She fretted. Panic set in her now hard features, creases formed on forehead as she fiddled with her fingers and stammered out her reason. I don't like talking about my husband's death, so he did kill him. Damon was really not helping his case, and I'd be happy to show him how angry I was. There were so many questions I wanted to ask about Damon, but I stopped myself and gave a half-hearted I am sorry. My words were cold, but my eyes were surely screaming out my condolences to her. The switch was fighting to be off, but I held it up firmly, although I could feel the barriers failing. I needed a drink. Suddenly my eyes zoned into Mrs. Flowers' jugular, and I pushed down the bloodlust raging in me like the monster I was. I think I'll skip breakfast, it came out in a hoarse voice as I pushed past her, not wanting to do something I'll regret. By she began, but I was already out of the house and running from the memory of the sweet-smelling blood pumping in her frail body. How easy it would be to rip open. Shaking away the thoughts in time to see the car that headed towards me but veered off the road when the driver caught me like a deer in the headlights. The girlish scream somehow seemed delicious, and the sadistic evil in me wanted to hear it again as I sank my teeth into her skin. Jumping out of her way, she had enough time to brake, but I saw her head jerk as she hit herself on the steering wheel, her blood dripping slowly in a tantalizing manner down her cheek as she sobbed. Coming out from the shadows of the forest, I did what I was designed to do. Ripping the car door open, I gave her a menacing smirk, ignoring the loud conscience that warned me to stop, but I couldn't stop. I was too far gone. Hello, a giggle filtered through my lips as I watched her doe eyes widen at my sight with fear. At least she was smart enough to know that yes, she should be scared. PPLE, she stammered though her pleads, hoping to get in touch with my humanity, but it was long gone. Her pleading just made this game much more exciting. Shish, don't be scared, I won. A smirk played at my lips before I could finish. Who am I kidding? Of course I am gonna hurt you. She got ready to scream, but I already made my lunge. STPOV. I would spend the complete night time on the brink of the cliff searching out at the town. I would watch because the darkish introduced unknown silhouettes and a ways away because the town got here to lifestyles which I thought became Georgia. I would seen how the dawn within the horizon and the way the sky introduced a new day complete of new possibilities, but I just found myself wishing for the night time. To be hidden a number of the shadows is not that where I belonged. I might spend the rest of my night time on those jagged rocks contemplating over my life. Over everything. Every selection it made. Everything I have finished incorrect. How I'd mess things make up with my very own brother. It regarded love, it was a few sort of karma that turned into now running into area. Elena's phrases had haunted me and the snapshots of the two replayed in my thoughts. I knew it wasn't proper to put all of the blame on Damon, as from Elena's face I knew it became usually her. I might recognize there has been something she did feel for Damon, but I simply didn't make makeup, she act makeup on it. She wasn't like Catherine, I make upos makeup. I wish I desire Isabel turned into here, she usually knew what to mention but she changed into probable hurting a lot. She constantly been a great pal. Sure, pal never had any intimate feeling for her, she became continually like my sister, which changed into why I knew about her love for Damon. Why I wouldn't understand, however she couldn't assist it, you cannot select who you like. It simply occurs. With a sigh, I jumped off the rock, touched down effortlessly on the ground but bending my knees for a secure touchdown. My fist dug into the earth earlier than I stood makeup instantly, then began to walk back into town. On my manner, I may want to hear something strange. It sounded like a car braking. The screeching sound of the tires at the pavement assaulted my ears. A person was in problem. It changed into in my nature as to why I started jogging in the direction of the sound. I may want to pay attention, a person sobbing in surprise, muttering exclusive words. Then the sound of metal braking shuddered via the woodland and I began to pressure myself to run faster. Then started out a girl crying and pleading for a person, but the phrases were not comprehensible as she was startled in fear. Breaking through the timber, marvel hit me once I watched a predatory gleam in none aside from Isabel as she lunged within the air toward the frightened girl who had tears strolling down her cheeks as she closed her eyes waiting what changed into to come, however remember helped the scream that constructed in her throat. Quick, I ran toward them, however found myself to be too overdue as Isabel's enamel sank into the lady's neck. My palms sought out her waist and strived to pull her away, but she became stronger as she driven me away, inflicting me to crash onto a tree. My lower back groaned in reaction to the heavy effect of the massive bark onto me, but I unnoticed the ache shivering via my backbone and charged at her with all my energy. Stop, Isabel, you need to stop. My urgency to keep her from herself fused the wanted power to knock her off, so she rolled away from the woman who collapsed onto the ground, her weak limbs failing her. Searching makeup at Isabel, blood stained her enamel, protected her blouse and caked her lips. A feral appearance on her face as she tangled up at my entire makeuption. She stood makeup to assault, however then her eyes dropped to the subconscious female for a split second, but that split second turned into greater than sufficient, and that I watched as Isabel's starvation died and her knees gave in as she fell to the earth, then appeared makeup at the sky giving a blood-curdling growl that became full of her pain before dripping her head and harshly fisting the floor. Isabel calling out to her as I knew the guilt became now surrounding her. She persisted to let loose agony-filled cries and her attack in the world grew more fierce. Isab. Her head snapped makeup and the menacing anger had lower back as her eyes bore into mine. No, you do now not get to experience sorry for me. She shouted angrily and then dropped go into reverse in tears. I know how you fay. No you don't. Agree with me, I do. This does not imply you've got lost your humanity reputedly. My phrases sparked something in her because after a few seconds, the crying died down, after which she snapped her head makeup. The horror-troubled look vanished from her face, instead replaced with the mischievous smile in her lips as her finger reached as much as wiped the blood far from them. I don't have any humanity, she whispered status makeup slowly. Her eyes dropped to the unconscious human. She turned into nonetheless alive as I should pay attention, the faint heartbeat, Looking back at Isabel, she flashed in the front of me, then gave another frustrated appearance towards the girl beside, sighing. Her next words threw me off and I knew something became incorrect. "Clean that makeup, will you? I've got to be somewhere," she chirped as though nothing had took place, after which unexpectedly kissed my cheek before disappearing. I spun around to seize her, however she became already long past. As much as I failed to need to, I had to talk to Damon. BPOV. I had to put that behind me. Why should I feel sorry for being myself? It become who I used to be. That become me. Wasn't it? A part of me wanted to head again and type out my own mess, then sit down and speak to Stefan, however I couldn't, which become why I pulled away and ran off closer to the primary town, and I felt excellent. In reality, properly. A vision had hit me and it blanketed Mason, which turned into why I'd be stopping by at Elena S or a barbecue. Yes, I know Elena S residence, however the sooner I go there, the less complicated. What am I saying? My main priority in the meanwhile turned into absolutely locating out Catherine S' plan, not anything extra. Going into the store, I attempted to slide some of the crowd I would needed to prevent at a close-by river inside the forest to clean out the blood on my blouse. However, it wasn't that easy, so I grabbed a random get dressed off the racks and held it in front of my chest to cull the stain. Slipping into the converting room, I took off the moist tee and slipped into the white dress. It changed into a summer knee excessive dress, and I used to be pleased with the result. Searching on the tag, I read that it priced $75.90, however I didn't have cash with me, so bye charge tag. I'd need to look innocent, so perhaps I have to put on white. It had the complete purity component going, and if I used to be going to get Jenna to like me, I needed to look the part. Stepping out of the converting room, I went in look for footwear, with my clothes pile in my arms. Looking round, my eyes landed on the shop assistant within the black trousers and black polo pinnacle. Her hair changed into piled makeup in a messy bun as she flickered through some greater garments. She regarded young, about 18, with an lively face as she talked to the person next to her. What actually caught my attention became the pulsing vein on her neck as her head tilted to browse the clothes. I felt hypnotized as I watched the moderate motion of the exposed pulse, and my hearing zoned onto the sluggish calm thudding of her heartbeat. From right here, her blood smelt sweet but spicy. Shaking my head, I attempted to shake away the hunger. Maybe later. Proper now. I wanted shoes and a jacket. As soon as I saw she became performed with the lady, passing her a green tea blouse, I approached her, tapping her lightly at the shoulder. "Excuse me." She turned around, gave me a once-over before plastering her Corporation of the Month grin. "Can I help you?" she asked sweetly. "Hello, I am searching out black leather boots to go together with this get dressed," became my reply. Her expression fell, twisting right into a grimace, and popularity turned into in her eyes. "Did you get that get dressed from here?" she finally asked, still cautious. "Yeah, I did, doesn't it look excellent? You can not maintain it on for lengthy. However, I am gonna purchase it. I used to be looking to avoid using the mind compulsion because of loose will and all that crap. Save policy. My screw loose will." I grabbed her arm forcefully and felt the heartbeat of blood speeding through her veins. "Listen, sweet cake, I am in a rush, so if you could just assist me with what I want, we may not have a trouble now, might we?" Hitching an eyebrow as I watched her wince but then freeze underneath my compulsion. "What could you like?" she asked in that peppy teen voice whilst letting cross of her arm and liberating her from my maintain. Higher. Smiling in contentment together with her relentlessness. "Now I want black boots, probably fight in a leather-based jacket, black too," adding an harmless, barely patronizing smile. "I think I've the precise component for you." She grinned and commenced to walk via the gang, and that I observed. She stopped in front of the jacket section and gestured to those on show. One which caught my eye turned into the one with the primary detail to be silver zips and the massive collar. Ideal. Pulling the tag off, I positioned it on and grinned while seeing myself at the nearby reflect. "How do I look?" Spinning round so she should get a glance. Her appreciative smile made me chortle lightly. "Make ooper makeup. What about these for footwear?" She held makeup a couple of studded fight boots. "Ooh, best," she smiled when passing me them. Again I pulled off the tag, after which placed on the boots. "You re this type of make up makeup, pal, the use of your discount to get me those," giving the harmless smile even as compelling her for her settlement. "What are buddies for?" She grinned, waving her hand nonchalantly. "Ah, humans by no means end to amuse me." How clean it turned into. Well, it has been remarkable. I started out, then located my palms on her shoulders, steadying her. However, as for now, you may forget I used to be ever right here. Earlier than she was launched from my compulsion, I was out of the shop and skipping down the street, noticing the stares I used to be receiving from the guys and the glares from a few women. Returning the grins, I make uplight a few hellos. As I handed them, the whole lot regarded makeup now lifestyles seemed clean. I felt like I used to be on pinnacle of the arena and a sing tune readying in my throat. Now that I had the innocent appearance down nicely except the leather, I needed a experience. Top thing, the car dealership changed into only some blocks down, which was why I got there in just a few seconds. A gasp fell from my lips because of the wide range of sports motors on show, but I desired something else. The income guy was talking to a pair, who as children had been gambling in the Land Rover, so I started to browse for my car. However, I didn't sense like I wished a vehicle. I desired something exclusive, something new. I wanted an alternate, and searching through the lot I found what I used to be searching out. Ideal. Licking my lips, I stalked over the fantastic splendor. I stumbled makeup on it through automobile and driver, however put it off for once. I save makeup. How silly of me to no longer consider this before. My finger stroked the blood purple paint and took a sniff of the Italian leather of the seat. The handlebars had been additionally silver and had a firm grip. Swinging my leg, I dropped onto the bike and twisted the handlebars. The texture of leather underneath me was comfort from heaven, and without thinking, I turned the bars as I pressed on the pedal and heard the start purr of the engine, and I smirked because it vibrated from underneath me. Gasoline became complete, so no problem getting to my vacation spot. Maintain on there, little lady. A palm on my shoulder halted my actions. Rearranging my expression in a flirty smile, I grew to become to the sales guy. He changed into actually form of cute, barely older, probable early 20s, brown curly hair, blue eyes, a returning flirty smile. The sleeves of his shirt have been rolled makeup and he became wearing black slacks. His hair became barely messy, likely a stressing activity, but the smile he turned into sending my manner informed me in any other case. Sorry, we're given a chunk. Excited looking makeup at him from under my eyelashes. It is okay. It's far a pretty terrific motorcycle. He smiled at him nervously. Guess I wasn't too awful at the artwork of flirting. Oh, I know. Harley Davidson 883 Roadster, 108 horsepower, Italian leather. It's been a lifestyle's lengthy dream to even be this close to this exceptional contraption. Permit along, take a seat on it, fingering the handlebars gently as I appeared makeup at him. His eyes widened with my full-size know-how about the motorbike. Transferring in the direction of him, I leaned forwards as he persevered to gape at him. Do not look so amazed, automobiles and bikes are in my blood. I spun around at the leather seat, so I was sat going through him. His eyebrow rose makeup inquiry and he ran his palms through his hair. Oh, genuinely? Oh yeah, pick out any car on this lot, challenging him. Right here, you positive you makeup for this project? Carry it on. I am Jay. He stretched his hand and that I took it with a tight smile. Jay, his name rolled off my tongue and he smiled with my repetition. I am Izzy. My solution wasn't sufficient as he requested with a hitched brow, brief for Isabel. This is a nice call, he complimented me. His hand nevertheless held mine, however the different one ran through my hair. Select the automobile, pretty boy. Pretty boy, he regarded, happy with our interaction. Okay, undertaking time. That car. That one, he pointed, and that I whistled at his choice. You suggest the Chevrolet Camaro convertible, he groaned, frustrated that I knew this too. I was actually playing this little sport. Up to 60 miles consistent with our in 5:44 seconds, engine length 6,162 cc, pinnacle speed is 155 miles per hour with a power output of 3,994 bhp. He makeup me by means of asking gears 6 velocity, answering his easy question earlier than including I did have a Chevrolet as soon as you did. Dodge or Challenger, I responded proudly, however then I remembered how damaged it become. I clearly neglected that car. Perhaps I will purchase it once more. Exceptional. We walked for a while in between the sizable form of cars earlier than he pointed to another car. Try that one. Once more, I responded freely and conveniently. Corvette C6 convertible, 6.0 V8 second automobile, is going as much as 60 miles in step with our in 4.6 seconds. Great speed is roughly about 184-ish. Should this get any less difficult? 186 Clearly he corrected, and I used to be about to argue, however realized he turned into proper. Nicely. Point 1 to J. Something. I rolled my eyes earlier than I persevered with the specs of the automobile: automatic transmission, 6-speed gears, 5,967 cc engine length, electricity output of 398 bhp. I might veil long past on, however he inter makeuped me again. Okay, I accept as true with you currently. He relented, finally realizing there was no way in beating me other than my tiny slip makeup. Searching makeup at him, I replied, never doubt my competencies, placing a light kiss on my cheek. Whilst shifting back to have a look at him, he appeared startled, however blinked away to restoration makeup before commenting, might not think of it again. Proper, smirking at his confusion earlier than stepping again, and looking at him. He kept his hand in mine, no longer trying to let pass. Now about the bike. Yes, nicely. It seems I do not have to tell you the fundamentals. I smiled at that. But you should comprehend it's $600. Oh, despite the fact that is with 20% off. He turned into again in income man mode. Oh, nicely, that seems reasonable enough, gambling alongside, even though he turned into blind to the sport. Yeah. Nodding, I looked him in the eye as I spoke, evenly but seductively. However, I do not need to pay, do I? Pausing to make certain he nodded. Right. Issue. The council turned into being egocentric to only make up vervain to their households and the police pressure. Due to the fact I already paid and stuffed out the forms. Make up me, you within the clear, he sighed, looking down at his clipboard, after which returned at me. Although you forgot to fill this component out. Panic kicked in and my eyes widened. Your smartphone number. His voice became seductive now, and that I caught on to his recreation. Relief calmed me, and that I smiled. He became lovable, sufficient, and who knew, maybe a date became what I needed. I could not keep dwelling my existence in a field that revolved around tragic live tales. The answer changed into meaningless intercourse. Whilst your wreck. I discovered myself asking him forwardly. Oh, might you study that? He looked down at his watch, after which returned at me. He then grew to become the sign from open to closed and switched the lighting off in the room. It is now. He smirked, and earlier than I could process the rational wondering, my lips sought out his, and a fevered kiss happened as he subsidized me makeup into a nearby room and locked the door behind us. Looking round, I saw it become his office. His hungered lips captured mine, and in no way leaving mine as he make-upped my ass and picked me up to return me makeup onto his desk. The get dressed rid makeup as he moved his palms make up my thigh, his touch causing me to shudder even as his kisses dropped from my lips and onto my neck instead, and he commenced to suck at the uncovered pores and skin, likely to create a hickey marking his territory. Oh, Isabel, his hands were groping me and pulling me closer to him as if he wanted me, he desired me, and I used to be loving each second. I attempted to stop myself from comparing him to my past and concentrated on J. Isabel, he breathed once more, his heartbeat increased. My hand moved down his chest, making it way closer to his hardening erection. Popping open of the denim's button, however, he stopped me, taking a preserve of my hand to halt my actions. Wait, he stopped me, retaining his head down close to my neck as he calmed himself down. His chest become pressed make up against mine, and that I should feel his respiratory sluggish down. Grabbing some locks of his hair, I gently pulled him make up to face me, his chin resting on my breast. Sure know how to kill a mood, I whined, and he chuckled earlier than pulling away and straightening his garments. Lack of confidence changed into attempting make up into the intellectual barrier of the humanity transfer, however I fought it again. Did I do something incorrect? No, he shook his head and paused from buckling his belt and moved in the direction of me, setting palms on my fingers as he looked at me in the eye. I certainly like you, and I might love to take you on a date, he answers, and that I subsequently understood what he changed into pronouncing. He wanted so far me. Date me. I do not want you to make uppos makeup, I just want to get for your pants. His eyes bore into mine, and I may want to see the fact in his vivid blue eyes. His were a lighter coloration than damn. What was I doing? There was an excellent man right here who failed to want intercourse. He preferred me and wanted to realize me, and still my thoughts returned to a guy that had broken my coronary heart repeatedly. I should not be sad for all time. Status makeup from the table, I straightened my jacket and pulled at my get dressed. He watched me with an incredulous expression. Listen, Jay, I kinda have a meeting that I am late to, so I should get going. He looked down on the ground, shuffling on his toes as he cleared his throat repeatedly. Mystic Grill, 9:30. This time he regarded makeup with a wide smile like a child on Christmas Day. That would be make Uperb, he breathed with large happiness that I felt it too. There has been something approximately in the manner he care about me wanted me. He made me feel unique, like I mattered. Yeah, a grin on my face as I stared makeup at him through my eyelashes. Yeah, he showed my words with another grin my way at the same time as returning to buckle his belt. Walking over him, I pressed my fingers on both facets of his face and pulled his lips down to crash on mine. Giving him front to discover my mouth, his tongue danced with mine sensually and my palms moved as much as his hair whilst his wrapped round my waist pulling me nearer. If I do not go away now I never will, murmuring against his lips. He pulled return to speak. I do not need you to. I do not want to, a small smile tugging at my lips. He moved back down to trail kisses make up my neck whilst talking. How critical is that this assembly? He sounded forlorn. Existence or loss of life kind of situation. It became practically half the reality. Mason had ability to be connected to Elena's future and it was up to me to preserve her secure. Sound extreme. He regarded makeup at me and pulled a mock extreme face and that I laughed, ruffling his soft curls. Sure it's Miles and that I kinda need to be there. In searching at his clock, I saw the time and realized that they had likely all arrived at the fish fry 30 minutes in the past. Now, I exclaimed and he dragged his lips away with a groan. I can't wait to peer you tonight, he found out, pulling his body far away from mine. Me too, I answered, then pushed my hair again with my fingers. I need to move now. My palms were nonetheless entwined along with his and he pulled me in for every other sensual kiss. I am gonna go now, I mumbled through his lips, out heavy breathed mingled. I am gonna be overdue, I sighed and pulled away this time. He grinned, a mischievous look on his face as he looked at me. Bye Jay. See ya at 9:30. He jogged my memory in an unlovable way. I needed to location every other kiss on his lips but I shortened it before he may want to deepen it. Bye, I sighed and he reluctantly. He allowed go of my arms and I whispered any other bye earlier than I ran out of the room and rested on the door. In the end I felt all right and the hunger for existence and strength back, as did the skip in my step as I skipped out of the dealership, weaving inside and out of the automobiles. Earlier than ultimate the glass door, I grew to become the closed signal to open and with a small snort, jumped on my new motorbike, sitting carefully with my dress and I was off. The speed was insane and I was loving every 2D of the wind whipping via my hair. Quicker, faster, it truly is exactly what I did. Turning the handlebars, I accelerated and drove past the blur of the town and kept my attention forwards, leading to Elena's residence. The motorbike worked amazingly in that I stuck the attention of many passengers. Flashing a sparkling smile for the audience, I persisted to my destination. The wind became blowing my hair again and the frenzy changed into filling me with pleasure. Fun from the adrenaline rush bubbled in my throat which I released. Turning left, I was now rolling into Elena's street and the closer I got, the less excited I felt. My happiness become now dwindled as I slowed down and started out my manner closer to the residence. It was 2D final one at the cease and I should see it from right here. I found myself preventing outside the house and actually looking it. Sounds of glasses clinking and plates came from the house along with Mason's laughter and Jenna's snort. I needed to move. I could not let them feel like they might damage me due to the fact they could not. I had them manipulate over my existence. I made my very own decisions. It changed into all me. Fuck my lifestyles was my sigh earlier than swinging my leg over to get off the bike. Taking walks towards the residence felt like I setting myself make up for execution or something. Slowly, I lifted my knuckles and froze for a second before tapping onto the door gently. Then I remembered my look so I fast patted down my hair and smoothed out my dress. J's fragrance was nevertheless on me and I kinda liked it. Right here I was going to the fish fry so as to talk to Mason and ensure he wasn't planning something make-up silly. It was part of my job description. I would not say that I could imagine Emily and all the other ancestry of witches laughing at my screwed make-up destiny because I would met Emily and she or he become many stuff but never a complain. If there has been a way for me to keep away from Mystic Falls I would do it, however I was needed here. I needed to defend the harmless. Subsequently the door opened and I was glad it become Jenna. I ought to inform she turned into near drunk along with her droopy eyes and little stumble she simply did. Hiya Jenna, I smiled sweetly. Hi there makeup, she dragged it out and that I realized that we hadn't met yet. I am sorry we haven't met. I am Isabel, a chum of Mason, and I was seeking out him. Were given told he'd be here as though on cue. Mason rounded the nook and gave me a smile whilst seeing it changed into me, however I left out it. Damon observed in the back of his eyes widened in marvel to find it became me. Then he glanced at Mason and frowned at something before glancing again at me and giving an apologetic smirk. Having the wall makeup made it slightly easier to disregard the guilt, betrayal and pain they caused me, but I may want to experience it trying to seep through the wall, even though I knew it might all develop into anger. Following behind them become Caroline and Elena, who trailed in after. Caroline widened her eyes at my sight, but Elena had dropped her gaze in shame. I make Uppo's makeup, I imagined it, but I am positive. Damon flinched a little from her closeness, hopeful, wishing I bet. Please are available. Jenna grinned and held the door open. Taking the invitation, I stepped into the doppelganger's residence. This is gonna be a protracted day. DPOV. Of root I used to be still mad. Cranky too. I'd slept on Isa's new home's roof and my again groaned in protest inside the morning. I might clearly spent the whole night taking note of her gradual respiration and the mild shuffling of her sheet. 1-2 way via the dream, I did listen her breathing make up erratic, and once I checked through the broken window, she became tossing across the bed. As a great deal as I desired to slip over, wrap my palms around her and just protect her, inform her that the whole thing become K. I could not the spell. Although that wasn't all that might forestall me, Isabel herself stopped me. She requested me to live away, and as hard as that became, I needed to make up her space. I knew her too well to realize she needed to make Uppo's makeup, however she ought to forgive me. I might make up her the distance she needed, which changed into I might left earlier than the solar rose, as I decided that I should sort out the werewolf scenario, after which I'd move return to her and grovel. Give an explanation for the way it wasn't my fault, promise her it become a mistake and that I'd never do something as make up as that once more. I would tell her that I loved her. However that failed to work, as she became right here now, in all likelihood to kind out the Mason scenario too, but after I seemed closely at her, I noticed a alternate. Something flickered in her eyes as she caught in my eye, but it became shielded simply as quick as it came. She was searching exceptional as continually, and that I loved the outfit she had on. She gave the look of an angelic rocker, and the sight became doing wonders for me, despite the fact that I discovered it unusual that her hair changed into out of location. It as ordinary waves had been messier than standard. She had no B6F D8 D88 D79 Ed 1018 DF 623 DOB 49 E84 E7 these days. However, all her stuff become at mine. Whilst she stepped into the residence after being invited in, a smirk tugged at the corner of her lips and a mischievous glint become in her eye. Thanks for inviting me into your lovely home, she informed Jenna, but her eyes remained glued to Elena's, who had fear written on her face. Any friend of Mason is a friend of mine, Jenna slurred. Absolutely. The drink became taking a toll on her. People cannot deal with their drink. They need to try my 70-year-old scotch and see if they are still standing from one sip. Properly, we were consuming and cooking. In case you'd like to join us. Wait, you are over 18, aren't you? Jenna requested, her eyes narrowing as looked some make up and down, but the light weight she become made her a little tipsy, so she wavered a little. Permit us simply say I am manner older than I appearance, she replied mischievously, casting a look at me then at Mason. She became appearing so in a different way from the day gone by, and it appeared something became blockading her from being herself. Something become off about her, and I needed to find out what. BPOV. It was so my time to have my fun. Let my hair down, paint the metropolis crimson and all that crap. I used to be about to follow Jenna out the room. Mason was holding out his hand for me to move first, at the same time as Damon smirked, preserving out a hand, but neither of them could be that fortunate, so I just walked beyond each of them and into the kitchen. The whole lot smells first rate, I complimented. You have to be Alaric, I grinned whilst seeing him stirring some sauce within the pan with a cautious expression. Everybody else had trailed in the back of me into the kitchen. It truly is me, he smiled. Do I know you? He regarded Caroline, and I chuckled. Please forgive me, I am Isabel. A pal of Mason, my name, regarded to have sparked some hobby in his expression, but he attempted to hide it, even though he turned into barely overdue with that. Oh, best to satisfy you. I shook his hand before picking makeup the spoon he was stirring with and licking the sauce off. Wishes more salt, I whispered before handing him back the timber spoon. Yeah, me and Isabel move manner again, Mason teased, probably remembering our past, turning my interest to them. Caroline and Elena had disappeared off makeup stairs. Damon was making him way toward me, but I moved to the alternative facet of the counter to stand subsequent to Jenna, who became beginning some other bottle of wine. Mason stood next to her and flashed me a smile which I noticed Damon failed to revel in. Because of this I've so much in opposition to you turned into my snarky statement to Mason, but he without a doubt gave a secretive smirk. Oh Mason, you don't have any concept what is coming for you. Jenna inclined her head in hobby do tell, leaning at the counter. Wit. Gladly became my reply. I wiggled my eyebrows at Mason. The switch turned into stopping the forceful feelings for Damon to discourage, turning all my feelings into rage. Nicely, I need to be extra drunk if I am gonna take care of the embarrassment. Ah, come of it, man. Damon started to talk, giving Mason a manly pat on the lower back. There's not anything to be embarrassed. Approximately, he smirked at him. Mason became nevertheless wary of him, however it turned into understandable with the mock harmless appearance he had on. Oh, I am sorry, we have not met. Smiling innocently at Damon, I am Isabel, holding out my hand for him. He located his palm in mine and that I forced myself to ignore the pull drawn towards him. Funny, you appear familiar. His lips pursed as he persevered his act. Properly, if that's how he wanted to play. Doubted. I just got here into town, preserving my voice detached as our gazes locked. Oh, any specific cause? He was correct. I'll make uply him that, however, I used to be undeniably better at mind video games. With a sickeningly sweet smile, I dropped his gaze to send a significant glance at Mason earlier than answering. Catch makeup with antique pals. Damon's reaction to my brief interaction became a low growl, that handiest I had heard earlier. Then he asked, along with his eyes in narrowed slits, maybe make some new ones. I knew in which he was getting at, however I disregarded his query. You continue to have not told me your call, smirking a bit as he huffed due to my lack of awareness of his query. He then recovered by way of clearing his expression as he brought himself. Sorry Damon. Damon Salvatore. I wasn't surprised that he saved the charade makeup. That is what he did, satisfactory toying with others. This time I failed to keep lower back the disgusted expression on my face. Salvatore, I have heard rumors about you. My tone grew colder unintentionally. That he's an asshole. Jenna piped. Makeup unexpected me with the reminder of the amused target audience within the kitchen. Weighing what she said, I sent an approving smile before answering. Properly, that in the heartbreaker that he is. My words brought on him to wince before he composed his expression, but I may want to see his blue eyes had hardened into ice blue pebbles. His lips parted to mention something, however, then closed shut as there has been no real response to what I said. A prevailing victorious smirk changed into awe on my face now as I stared him down, but inwardly changed into a warfare for me to shed the tears. I knew that the minute I allow this wall down will deliver the uncovered pain to be revealed to him, so I fought harder. Shifting on, Jenna started out as she poured some vodka into some other glass and held it out for me. Drink makeup, she grinned, and that I downed the shot comfortably, then kicked my lips in appreciation. Straight makeup, my kind of gal. Damon had the audacity to praise me. Sending him a glare, I smirked, contemplating a comeback. Failed to peg you for a guy with a particular type. All you need is a vaggie. I started, however become makeup by way of Jenna yet again. Okay. Damon became sending me a glare which then became a crestfallen expression as he regarded down in frustration. You in no way told us how you know Mason. Jenna tried to transport at the verbal exchange. With a sigh, I leaned onto the counter to begin our tale. Me and Mason had been that complicated on and stale makeup. Domestic dog love courting, it changed into half the fact, but they didn't need to know that. Oh truly. Jenna dispatched a once-over to me, after which grew to become to Mason with a hitched brow. A massive part of me turned into excited, seeing Damon grow to be new annoyed as his fists balled makeup into fists. I knew he hated Mason, and now to recognize that I would slept together with his enemy must anger him. That in the truth I failed to inform him approximately me and Mason, even though that befell after I left him. Yeah, met Isabel after excessive college. Mason reminisced with a far-flung look as his hooded eyes locked with mine when taking a drink of his scotch. His lust-crammed gaze jogged my memory of 10 years in the past. The musty, dim-lit bar in Chicago turned into nearly empty, however I couldn't locate it in myself to component with the comforting glass of sour scotch. It helped me forget about, properly kinda, my mind were again assaulted with the reminder of Damon's words. What become I to him? Who had I been to him? Never could I be sufficient for him. It continually be Catherine. What made his situation worse turned into the fact that love wasn't pressured, it turned into real, and I need to take a hint and stop trying to fight it. That turned into what the Scotch and Infinite Vodka photographs have been. Equipped makeup to go away doll Gloria approached me as she stacked my empty vodka shot glasses. Her eyes held the standard fear as she stared down at me. Searching makeup at her with an expression that study. What do you think? In solution to her question, she leaned in, resting her chin in her hands as she looked at me. Boyfriend problem. Her phrases stung me as they brought on me to take into account what regarded to be the unforgettable. When I did not reply, she painfully persisted. Been there. I'll let you know this, babe. You manner too appropriate for high earlier than she may want to finish. I slammed down the glass onto the counter when I used to be completed, not trying to hear her assurances. Do not. Creating a menacing gaze to create the concern in her, but she waved it off. I am simply looking to help. Why? Her sympathy became literally making me ill. Then get me another bottle. My reaction became curt and sharp, indicating that I failed to want to talk or concentrate. I cherished Gloria. She helped me broaden my powers, and he or she continually acted like the older sister to me. However, now become no longer the time. Ingesting will best numb that ache. Briefly she warned me. Then I'll keep consuming. A smirk performed on my lips, and he or she shook her head with a pitiful look earlier than turning away and on foot into the back. Attaining over the counter, I pulled the bottle of JD and grinned in victory. Some bartenders donned tea like that. A husky voice whispered in my ears, and that I grew to become to stand a totally handsome and manifestly involved man. Greenish golden eyes held his boldness as they bored into mine. His lips were curved into a heat-inviting smile. His constructed frame turned into wearing a gray short-sleeved versus neck tee blouse and causal denim jeans. His hand became stretched out, placed at the counter subsequent to me as he leaned in, his face simplest inches from mine. Lust overrode my emotions. Guess I was proper, he smirked, and that I looked at him harassed. Sorry. Taking some other gulp of my drink as I waited for his solution. Made a guess with myself which you'd be beautiful, and here we re. He sounded honest along with his choose makeup line. Jutting my chin, makeup tee him. I stared at him as I trailed my foot, makeup the internal part of his left thigh, making him shiver, and his eyes shadowed with need as he listened to me talk. Allow us drop the tacky strains we could. I recognize what I need, and I am 99% positive it is the same element you hoping for. You must understand that I am just on this for the intercourse, telling him the fact as I failed to want to steer him on. He regarded too candy for informal sex, so his response threw me off a touch. Without warning, he grabbed me and slung me over his shoulder, strolling out of the bar and ignoring the target market round us. You hire make it worthwhile, I giggled, and he growled, which became me on even extra. He then were given into the front seat, but while the engine changed into strolling, he became to face me to whisper in a deep husky voice, I am gonna rock your global, and with that we drove off to his location. After that, it turned out that it wouldn't be only a one-night time stand. Waking makeup the following day, he had already been unsleeping and looking me at that, so I couldn't sneak out. We ended makeup speak me, and we ended makeup with every other spherical of remarkable sex, but then matters were given complex, particularly whilst he informed me he was a werewolf. I backed the favor, telling him I was a vampire, and we determined to be buddies. We stopped the sexual dating while he observed some female and fell in love. In no way told me who she become, even though however I by no means bothered with it. He had his existence and that I had mine. And I might quickly be taking his. Except he made me make Uppo's makeup rationally. Thinking about the coolest antique days. Mason stuck onto my daydreaming state as he nudged me along with his elbow. I seemed makeup at him and grinned in answer, however the photos of my hand accomplishing into his chest were displaying my true looking forward to happiness. Food S makeup Damon known as from in the back of us, and I grew to become to stroll over subsequent to him. Smells terrific, I sniffed appreciatively. Here, let me help you serve, taking the plate of garlic bread from Jenna earlier than she should, bitch. On foot into the eating room, I discovered Elena and Caroline freeze from placing the desk whilst catching my eye. Elena's worry become almost tangible, and with a deep breath, I loosened my company grip on the bowl, then causally positioned the garlic bread on the table. The others filed in. Damon stuck onto my wavering manipulate as I persisted to take my deep breaths. Alaric seemed alert, probably equipped makeup to shoot me with one of his fancy Buffy the Slayer artillery makeup his sleeve. Jenna and Mason appeared oblivious as they laughed about a few antique memory. I will seize the wine make makeup and walk to the kitchen but heard footsteps observe me. Turning around, I used to be confronted with Elena. She become both very courageous or very makeup. I wasn't certain whether or not to be angry at her or impressed by the truth she would face up to me. See, am I able to communicate to you? She played with her sleeves as she did not meet my eyes. Sure, what is makeup, Elena? Boyfriend issues. My phrases struck her and I watched in satisfaction as she winced from my words. Torture tired her face and her eyes played with unique emotions. I was certain Damon changed into likely listening and now not trying to hazard Elena's lifestyles as she changed into left by myself with a monster like me. I desired to apologize, she started, and I pretended to be interested as I became around and seemed gravely inquisitive about her hollow brown eyes, but he remained on her spot, on the alternative aspect of the counter wager. She wasn't as suicidal as I concept. I kissed Damon. It become all me. I do not kn nicely I do I bet I was slightly jealous of your relationship with him and that I care approximately Damon, but you have to realize I love Stefan. I really like him so much and would not make him makeup for whatever or absolutely everyone. I am so sorry, Isabel. I made a mistake, it changed into all a mistake, she babbled, soundless tears rolling down her cheeks, and that I stared at her for some seconds at the same time as processing her phrases. A mistake, it become a mistake. Wager I made the error too changed into my numb whisper before picking up the glass wine bottle and pushing beyond her. Before rounding the nook, I plastered on my faux smile and shook the bottle suggestively to the audience waiting. No longer bold to meet Damon's eyes, I took the seat next to Caroline, which I knew changed into stored for Elena. Nicely, I am positive she wouldn't thoughts sitting subsequent to Damon. I may want to pay attention, her sniffling and muttering to herself incoherent words to calm herself down. Barbie and Damon probably could too, however they did not make a move. So Isabel, in which you coming from? Jenna requested, so I turned my attention to her. She had started to pile on meals, so I backed the gesture to make her experience extra at ease. Before answering, I dispatched a mild smile to Elena, who entered the room with a bowed head. Without a doubt, I am from France, tearing my eyes from her and answering Jenna's tranquil query. Elena was making her way to Caroline's seat, however, then saw I was sat there. Worriedly she looked for an unfastened seat and her shoulders slumped whilst seeing the simplest loose one became subsequent to Damon. Caroline mouthed a sorry and she or he simply nodded and sat at the empty chair. Jenna introduced the attention lower back to her. I barely felt sorry for her, she become surrounded, trapped in a circle full of lies. Everyone round her knew, even as she remained in the darkish. Wow. Properly bonjour, she rose her glass makeup and I smirked at her drunken nation. Did you simply come to go to from there? She questioned innocently, so I couldn't deny her of any answers. I might been journeying for a while and notion I would drop via to go to Carol. I might handiest heard the information about the mayor 3 days ago. My act became a 2D nature. When you live for over 100 years with a mask on, you get the gist of it. Oh, are you near the Lockwoods? Alaric attempted to fish for records with enquiring eyes. Obviously my piece of data had caught his attention. They have been all questioning that the Lockwood were enemies, and absolute confidence Damon turned into planning on a Marvel attack. Some of them casting a glance at Mason, he appeared more attentive to his food. So Isabella, what do you do? Alaric asked. I failed to leave out the tone in his voice. A bit too confident even for a vampire hunter. I am a journalist and element time creator. Important reason I journey loads. It's quite cool, Jenna complimented, adding greater wine to her glass. I was thinking about broadcast journalism, Caroline piped in, and I used to be amazed that she turned into being friendly to me. It's so cool you get to try this, she added appreciatively. Yeah, it's high quality. I am certainly right here in Mystic Falls for a brand new assignment. Her eyes widened and she or he requested, oh yeah. What is it? The supernatural. Anybody other than Jenna dropped their cutlery and that they gave me warning glances. Ooh, this was amusing. Definitely. And you notion Mystic Falls turned into the quality location. Jenna became just heightening my amusing. Anxiety within the room turned into so thick, it changed into slightly suffocating. Oh yeah, Mystic Falls is best. The smirk turned into too strong to hide, and that frustrated Alaric even more. And why is that? Jenna requested, interest in her eyes even as consuming. Well, research helped me examine of the city histories. Many supernatural beings appeared to be sighted in Mystic Falls. Animal assaults. Me make makeup now not. What do you suspect? Jenna started to invite the million greenback query, however changed into stopped. Hello, how approximately dessert? Damon inter makeuped it and the smile fell from my face. Oh, I will get it. Jenna stood from the table. As soon as she left the room, I looked at Mason next to me and my eyes flickered onto my knife. Picking at makeup, I used it to reduce the meat and popped it into my mouth. Then without any other phrase, I stuck the silver knife into Mason's side. He groaned in pain, frantically reaching for the knife. His animalistic werewolf sounds escaped his lips and his eyes shattered. His affliction changed into pleasurable, making my lips raise into a smile. Elena and Caroline gasped in shock and Elena positioned a hand fell over her mouth. Damon stood from his seat and Alaric become makeup sufficient to hearth a stake from his sleeve at me. Brief as I fly, I caught it and then located it frivolously on the desk before resting my chin on my palms while searching sweetly at Mason, who pulled out the now twisted knife. He appeared makeup at me with a glare, nevertheless gasping and groaning. It is for almost killing me with every other candy smile. I rose from the table. I am gonna help Jenna with the pie. You must clean yourself makeup. I patted his head patronizing him and he shook away disgustedly. And Rick, you may wanna conceal this, pointing to the steak before taking walks into the kitchen without a care inside the world. It felt appropriate. I felt virtually precise. STPOV. Damon wasn't answering as his phone simply kept ringing until reaching voicemail repeatedly, so I'd given up and was planning on leaving to find him, although it'd chance an encounter with Elena. I knew I needed to get over it for Isabel's sake. Running towards the door, my hand reached for the handle, determined to help one of my closest friends that was in need of my help, but when opening the door, I froze dumbstruck when my sight was assaulted with Catherine's presence. Stumbling a step back from the doorway but still maintained the strength to grip the door, blocking the path. Hello sweetheart, she drawled, a smirk in place with her usual mischief and mistrust in her eyes. Fury flooded me in remembrance that she'd tried killing Isabel, Caroline and even Matt, people that I'd began to care about. Memories of everything she'd caused flew through my mind, causing me to grip the door more tightly, causing splinters to crumble under my fierce touch. Before attacking her, I remembered that she didn't know Isabel was still alive, so her carefree attitude pissed me off even further. Can I come in? She used the childish voice she'd accustomed to. In that moment I realized something about the person before me. Catherine was a player, not just in the sense that teenagers used for a person who couldn't keep a long-term relationship. No, Catherine's game was deadlier than that. She toyed with life, her counters being the people that she manipulated. Sadly, me and my brother had been toyed with too. Damon more than me, but not anymore. Life and death had grown into a game for her and she enjoyed the ride no matter who was getting hurt. With a defined jutted jaw, I declined her offer with a stern no, which was released as a growl, although I knew my lack of invitation would be rendered useless, which was proven as she simply pushed past me, my rage heightening, emitting a growl to rumble in my chest. She looked around, inspecting her surroundings before to me with a raised eyebrow in question. Home alone, I see. A pleased expression had her eyes dancing in the dim lights with excitement as she waited for what we both knew was going to be an unanswered question. What are you doing here? I snapped, showing her I wasn't in the mood for her childish games. Having her here hurt me more with the similarity of appearance to Elena. Seeing Catherine was just a reminder of how everything in my world had been turned upside down with one moment, but I couldn't allow Catherine to know the turmoil in our lives, as I knew she'd simply use it to her advantage. I missed you, she gave a smile, her hands behind her back as she bounced on her heels. Moving closer to her, I cupped her face in my palm. What is it about you? My fingers now moved to coil in her curls, pulling her face closer to mine, our lips inches apart as my nose grazed her cheek. That makes me so. She rubbed her cheek on mine, giving a sigh of contentment with her finger clutching my shirt. Disgusted, ending with a sneer. Surprise colored her features. She processed my words of trickery. Her eyes dulled, a fierce emotion held in the glassy blue as her lips shifted into a grimace. Before she could act on the impulsive attack she was thinking, I'd stuck the vervain needle in the vein visible on her neck. Satisfaction hit as I watched the air leave her lungs as it became infested with the vervain, which was probably now clogging up her throat, enclosing her muscles and diaphragm. There's nothing left for you here. My sneer was to also link to my brother's behalf. She crumpled on the floor, desperately clutching at her burning throat while gagging and spluttering in useless attempts to rid herself of the vervain in her system. "Saint sweet sweet fan," she choked out helplessly, and I could feel my humanity get the better of me, but I ignored it with the danger she opposed on everyone. This time, it was her time to suffer. DPOV. Something was wrong, something was really wrong, and I knew it was all my fault. My Isabel would never do such an impulsive attack, especially with an unsuspecting human Jenna in the opposite room. Although I was quite turned on with her attack, that lust was overwhelmed with the worry. Truthfully, I can't help but enjoy the fact that she hurt him. 2 reasons. My Isabel would never put our covers at risk as she done. She presented an opportunity to reveal the truth to Jenna but also make her suspicious. My Isabel wouldn't act like this. The answer was simple: she was not my Isabel. She turned it off. That much was definite, and the changes were becoming more evident as I observed how reckless she been acting, but also the guarded emotion never left her eyes. She was hurting, and it was my entire fault. BPOV. All was quiet in the next room as me and Jenna prepared the dessert. While Jenna talked of her aggravating boss, I listened intently as to how the door quietly clicked shut and the others in the dining room began their murmuring. I can't believe she did that. Caroline was first to speak. "Will you calm down?" Damon hissed at them. I could hear feet shuffling and the clutter of utensils. "Damon, she's a danger to Jenna," Alaric warned. "Why was dear Elena so quiet?" "I agree, she's off the rails. How can she put the risk of Jenna finding out like this?" And there it was. "You all need to shut the fuck up," Damon murmured, and I heard more shuffling. "Isabel, Isa, Izzy." Jenna's voice infiltrated my thoughts as I removed my attention from the happenings of the room next door to turn to Jenna. "Sorry, Jenna," slightly out of it, realizing she was handing me the dessert plates. With a soft smile, I took them from her while she picked up the pie and a chocolate cake in the other as she led the way back into the dining room. My eyes searched the table, smirking when seeing the sudden disappearance of Alaric's steak as was the bloodied knife. "Brought dessert," Jenna announced. The others gave meek smiles to cover up. "Wait, where did Mason go?" "Said something about feeling ill," Elena was quick to answer. "Oh, that's too bad," I sighed mockingly, ignoring the multiple glares directed at me. Damon, however, had a somber look full of confusion as he gazed intently at me as if searching for the truth, and with that, I turned away from him. "STPOV. Why are you here?" It was the 7th time I'd asked this question, and I was growing more exasperated. It was the same answer again. I came back for you," she grunted, eyes drooped, her limbs weak by her side. Roughly, I cupped her chin, forcing her to look at me, and brought my gloved hand holding the vervain, then ran it down her cheek. The smell of burning flesh rose as I watched her cheek form a scar edging tower to her lips. Her pleading cries filled the atmosphere as she coiled in agony, fiercely shaking her trapped arms, the chains clinking as she resisted with clenched fists. Moving back, I leaned back onto the wall as I looked at her cries slowly quieten. "Why," she began in a choked gasp as she glared at me, but something softened in her eyes. "Why is it so hard to believe I came back for you?" she cried, unshed tears gleaming in her now glassy eyes. "Believe it or not, I love you, Stefan," she sighed, casting her gaze to the floor. "Same for Damon," I sneered, but she began to shake her head. A faraway look in her eyes as she stared behind me to the wall as a memory played in her mind. "I never loved your brother, Stefan. It was always you." She gave a small, tired, secretive smile, her breathing still heavy as she tried to straighten her body on the chair, but her chained ankles strained her movements. "Think about it, Stefan." She looked up to meet my eyes. "I never compelled your love. It was real." She continued to hold my gaze, but I broke it, then kicked the wall behind me before thumping my fists onto the brick, causing it to give a threatening rumble with a shake. Turning back to her, I let my rage break out my words, "Nothing's real with you, Catherine." She sat up and with a soft, almost vulnerable voice she asked, "You loved me once, why can't you love me again?" "I found someone else," I spat back. The words seemed foreign now after everything that had happened, but I repressed the distant memory. Amusement glinted in her eyes as she sneered. "Interesting choice of a rebound," she commented slyly. Sending a threatening glare at her, clenched my fists trying to inflate the blaring anger. "Elena is not like you. She's kind, she's pure." Catherine gave a sarcastic laugh, interrupting me before giving a coy smile as she challenged, "Then why are you spending your Saturday with me?" My description of Elena suddenly felt ironic with everything that happened that began to haunt my thoughts once again. BPOV. After dessert, me, Jenna, Damon and Alaric moved to the living room while Caroline steered Elena upstairs. We began a game of drunk Pictionary girls versus boys, and so far we were in the lead. A movie. Jenna continued to draw the boy and then began to seeable on their face. She shook her head tapping the board before drawing two stickmen in weird positions. Move. Twist. She added musical notes next to the two stick figures. Oh, dancing, I realized, and she nodded frantically before tapping at the scribbled face, then to the two figures dancing. Billy Elliot. Boy dancing. Scribble dancing. Each one got an exasperated huff as I continued to guess wrong. She drew more scribbles with more emphasis. Dirty dancing, I finessed, and she jumped then high-fived me. Both guys groaned with their losing streak. Jenna stumbled back to cozy up to her boyfriend, her eyes drooping with the effect of the alcohol taking a toll on her. That was fun. I had fun. The wine affected me too. I lost count after the 9 glasses. Plus Jenna had brought in shots in order for us to loosen up for this game. It's getting late and I have to get going. I don't mind you sleeping over, Jenna slurred. Actually, I am meeting up with someone. A male someone? Jenna asked. A sly smile graced her lips. Elena and Caroline chose that moment to walk back into the room. Elena seemed put off for some reason and I regretted not listening in on their conversation. Yeah, I answered Jenna half-heartedly, refusing to meet Damon's burning gaze. I could virtually feel his eyes on my back. Ooh, is it anyone I know? She asked animatedly. I debated whether I should say anything, but it was strange how I knew the guilt was there but couldn't really feel it. Actually, I couldn't feel anything apart from the building hunger and rousing lust, but I could detect the emptiness from lack of feeling, and if I allowed myself, I could give into that numbness. Well, it all happened because I needed a new car, throwing a glare at Damon which fell when seeing his crestfallen expression as he stared with an apprehensive look in his eyes. But a fire burnt in his blazing blue, flaring the hidden fury that he tried to glaze IY over. This wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want to be able to read into his pain, let alone have it affect me. Quickly I turned away from his sorrowful expression, looking back at Jenna with the faked excitement. Anyway, I went to buy a new ride. Jenna leaned in with enthusiasm, a waiting smile on her face. Caroline decided to chip in with excitement. You going out with Jay, the hot car sales guy? Of course, Mystic Falls was like Forks, everyone knew each other. Yeah, he wanted us to go out for drinks. Well, I am not going to keep you from something like that, she teased, and I stood up, thankful for the getaway. I do wish I could stay. I had so much fun. Oh, me too. We should do this again, Jenna grinned, her eyes heavy, induced from the large intake of alcohol. Over Jenna's shoulder, I caught Elena's suspicious and worried eyes, which got my covering my amused laugh with a smile sent to Jenna. I then answered Jenna, matching her excitement. We should. I'll give you my number. Her eyes drooped further and Alaric steadied her as she swayed. Yes, I'll go get mine, she slurred, making me laugh. She then stumbled, Alaric helping her while glaring at me discreetly while Jenna grabbed her phone on the table and then gave to me. Programming my number into hers, then calling mine before disconnecting to get her number. There I smiled at her. Unexpectedly she leaned into me for a hug, vodka and wine stenched her breath. I'll miss you, you are my new best friend, she laughed and I laughed with her. Alaric peeled her away from me with a disregarding frown. Up to bed with you, he said with a slightly amused tone. Any excuse to get me to bed, Rick? She asked, adding a wink before giggling again. I gave another chuckle. Her human lightweight was amusing to me. Alaric scooped her into his arms and began to upstairs. Good night everyone, she sang and waved over Buffy's shoulder, and we all watched as they disappeared upstairs, Jenna humming the Friends theme tune. Once they were gone, I turned to retrieve my jacket, but Damon was already holding it out for me, an unreadable expression in place. Defeat. Distress. Here, he whispered, handing me the jacket, and that one simple word was enough to create an ache deep in my chest with how lifeless and resigning his tone was. Slowly I took the jacket, careful to not allow any skin contact. Thanks. My voice had acquired his tone and I shook it off defensively as I shrugged into the leather jacket. Silently, I avoided eye contact with any of them as I gave a half-hearted wave, then moved towards my exit. Once reaching out to open the door, a firm hand gripped my arm, pulling me with force to turn around. My eyes locked with his icy blue ones as a determined streak was set in them. Gone was his smirk, replaced with a grim line, and his jaw jutted, remaining clenched. Don T. Go. His words were full of his anger. Blinking UO at him in surprise, I couldn't hide my perplexion as I asked what. Don T. Go to him, he elaborated in a more gentle voice. The hard edge to his eyes melted into exasperated desperation, and I felt myself come undone with his plead. Please, he added in a quieter tone. When I didn't say anything, he loosened his grip on my arm, making me think he'd given UO, but he stepped even closer, lacing my fingers with the arm he'd held, then brought our joined hands up to his chest, slowly letting go of my fingers so I could rest my palm on his chest, feeling the slow thud of his heartbeat. He was reminding me of his human years. The 16th of December 1863. There is a gentleman outside, a quite handsome gentleman, may I add. Trust Nurse Williams to add something like that. I fought the bicting urge to roll my eyes. She was still our madam, and we had to show respect to the madam nurse. He calls for Nurse Swan. Everyone's penetrating stare was bored into me, and it felt like a burn to my skin with the judgment and jealousness in their eyes. I hadn't made any friends, and frankly didn't intend to. I chose to be a nurse because I wanted to give the brave soldiers a chance to return to their families. If I couldn't have mine, it was satisfying to know that I was helping at least one person. Nurse Swan, madam urged in a more frustrated tone, and I could tell she was losing her patience. This time I fought the urge to not sink my teeth into her as I quickly stumbled out of the room. Madam, of course, was leading me, a good 3 feet away from me. Our souls were a whisper on the newly polished floor as we moved down towards the main entrance. No matter how many times we nurses washed the hospital, it was never enough to erase the stain of lost soldiers. I could still smell the blood of the innocent that are dead. Could the visitor be a soldier? Wanting to check on one of my patients that may have died, sometimes vampire blood, wasn't he able to save those who were already gone? Madam, I asked in a small voice. Yes, Nurse Swan, not even stopping or turning around to regard me. Clenching my jaw, I asked through gritted teeth, do you have any recognition of the visitor? You will see as we get there. Even though I couldn't see her facts, I knew she was wearing her disapproving frown. Nearing the entrance, Madam pushed open the door, revealing Mr. Salvatore. I breathed in surprise, almost ready to hug him, as I was glad he'd obviously made a full recovery, but restrained when I caught Madam Nurse was glaring at me. Miss Swan, he took of his hat, holding it to his chest as he looked at me with wonder. The glow he had in his expression made me so happy. This is what I wanted to do, give someone a second chance. He was still dressed in his battle gear, and it saddened me. The ache in my heart alerted me that I didn't want him anywhere near that kind of danger. I didn't want him to be at risk. Thank you, Mom, for bringing her to me, he thanked Madam Nurse, who gave her flirtatious smile. I was sure he was half her age, and it angered me with her brazen nature. Miss Swan, he caught my attention again, ignoring Madam Nurse's smile. That thought made me happy. I was wondering if you could accompany me to the gardens. Completely taking me by surprise. That was not what I expected. At all. Her, Madam Nurse asked with disgust, and I was again infuriated with her presence. Sorry, but Nurse Swan cannot leave today, she hastily refused, grabbing my arm. Pulling a watt from her grip, I dared myself and allowed the anger to AEP into my voice. And why not? You haven't done your tasks for the day. Yes, I have. I checked on the patients. I made my section's beds. I took my patients to the garden. I washed the walls, the floor, and the patients' clothes. I attended all my patients again and fed those who needed my assistance. There is nothing that I have not done, and you know it. What about their dinners? I would not keep her long, Mr. Salvatore gratefully added, and I smiled him with kindness before turning my feral anger at Madam Nurse. The answer is no, Nurse Swan. You shall be staying because I said so. Now you cannot leave, and I am very sorry you came all this way, Mr. Salvatore. She pulled at my hand again more fiercely, but I yanked it back and moved it up to slap her. As she touched her cheek, wide-eyed at my actions, I stumbled back next to Mr. Salvatore. Then the anger returned, overwhelming my surprise, and I tore the nurse's cap off my head and pulled the pins, allowing my hair to fall down my shoulders, relief from the weight of it being released. Good day, Gladys, my stern voice told her not to object, and with that I grabbed Mr. Salvatore's arm as we ran out of the hospital compound. Once we were a few meters away and around the people on the street, I turned to him. What a rush I breathed. I am still in awe of your bravery, he gasped, still catching his breath, but I didn't need to. His words rose a blush to my skin and my eyes fell downwards to the ground in embarrassment. Miss Swan, he called to me, and I looked up from under my lashes. Something seemed to overcome him with my stare as he took my face in his hands and brought me closer to him. His lips touched mine gently and I knew I was so far gone. The feel of his soft lips onto mine as he took control, giving me my first kiss in my whole eternity. A sort of electricity current seemed to flow in every inch of me. Realizing we were in public, he pulled away to look into my eyes and I could tell he felt it too. I wanted to do that since you waited by my bed, he admitted in a shy voice, making the blood rush again, heating my skin. Miss Swan, he sighed in content happiness. Mr. Salvatore harmonizing with his tone. His amused expression then turned into a distant yet perplexed expression. How did you do it? Do it? Do what, may I ask? Becoming more and more confounded as I thought through his question and trying to understand what he was asking of me. Save my life. I remember talking to you. His forehead became creased as if he was trying to recall the night. Then I then forget what happened after. His face scrunched up as it was difficult for him to remember. Guilt moved me as I remembered my compelling him to forget me biting him. I didn't like taking away anyone's free will, especially his, for some reason. You were in a coma for a while, maybe that's why you cannot remember the door operating on you. The lies felt bitter falling from my lips. Doctor, your case was severe and I caught myself before the slip up. We had to do everything I could to make sure you'd be well. His next words caught me off guard. Thank you. Surprise was probably showing in my expression as well as my tone. For what? His face changed into confusion before relaxing his face and answering with full truth. I don't know, but something tells me to thank you. I didn't know what to say to that, but gave a tight-lipped smile. Then, without my own accord, my palm rose up to his chest, which rose and fell heavily under my touch. I could hear the beating of his heart gain pace and volume. I am so happy you're okay, I whispered in relief, and his curious gaze turned into happiness as he stared down at me. Feeling the heartbeat under my touch reminded me he was alive and he was okay. He leaned in closer to match my quiet whisper. I am happy I got a second chance to see you once more, he sighed. His words gave me hope and happiness. He cared about me as much as I cared about him. It seemed to be happening so fast, but I was past caring. Being a Moedal taught me to take chances. Damon Salvatore seemed to be my chance at hope, at a future, at love. I leaned down to place my ear on his chest. The beating grew louder with my proximity and the pace was really fast that I worried, so I moved back. Your heart is beating so fast. It beats for you, he murmured. This time it was me who grabbed him to steal another kiss. Blinking away the memory, I felt the burning of nearing tears, so I ripped my body away from his embrace, keeping quiet as I buried those suppressed memories again before flinging the door open and running down the porch steps. Nearing my bike, I heard Elena's calls for me. Isabel. Isabel, she called, but hearing her voice was bringing me to the peak of my patience. I am sorry, she screamed at me. Stopping my next step, I turned to face her. I did it, I kissed him. Damon hasn't done anything wrong, she exasperatedly tried to get me to understand. Her blue eyes were frantic and wild and full of deserved guilt, tears already falling down her cheeks as she waited. Her chest rose and fell with each heavy breath. Her words held lies as she attempted to take the full blame. We both knew he kissed her back. I'd seen it and Damon hadn't denied it. Anger coursed through me as the memory was brought to my attention, so I snapped. Elena gasped, cupping her reddened cheek, stinging, from the impact of the blow. She stared wide-eyed at me and I, myself, was surprised from my lack of control. Without another word, I shed away all these nearing memories before turning on my heel to walk away. BPOV. His lips placed hot open-mouthed kisses on my bare shoulder due to his ravenous side that was unleashed with a little bit of my help. The new one-shoulder red dress I'd bought for this date was now strapless but also had a ripped slit on the side where his fingers were now splayed on my thigh, pushing the hem higher and higher. After leaving Jenna's house with fury emanating in my veins, I'd felt the humane feelings creeping up on me, so I'd arrived in anger at the grill, and the moment I saw Jay, the lust took over and I jumped him, which is why we were in the bathroom right now. Luckily he'd responded to my animalistic side that needed him to comply to my hunger of someone wanting me. He was responding well and I reveled as his arms encased me as he continued his ravenous kisses while he placed me on the counter. My legs wrapped around his waist, clinging to him tightly and deepening the kiss when his lips claimed mine once more. I allowed his tongue to delve in my mouth and both tongues began to fight for dominance while our fingers tried to undress the other. The urge of the overwhelming lust caused me to rip his blue shirt when the buttons became an obstacle. He chuckled with my actions, but he couldn't judge, seeing as he ruined my dress already, but instead he placed his palms on the side of my face and looked at me deeply in the eyes. You are so beautiful. My breath caught in my throat as I gazed into his dark blue eyes, but I froze when the thought of the shade being darker than Damon's fleeted through my mind. What was wrong with me? Jay was such a great guy, and here I was after convincing him to be like this, even though he wanted to get to know me. He wanted a relationship, which wasn't what I needed right now, but even though he was fueled by my compliance, I saw the innocence in his midnight blue eyes. Isabel, he sighed and moved his lips back onto the bare shoulder, slowly moving towards the peak of my breasts. The heat I'd been feeling before was slowly fading even as his fingernails dug into my skin, bringing my once heated core to his hardening erection as he stood between my legs. Jay, his name was a defeated sigh, but he mistook it for a sigh of pleasure as he moaned before pulling my dress further down, exposing me to him. Jay, my voice was barely a whisper as I fisted onto the remaining shreds of his shirt and forced him to look at me. The predatory look glazed over his innocence and it broke me. This is what I'd become. I didn't want to turn back, because the minute I switch off, every single nerve in my body will remember the pain, the heartbreak would return and it'd kill me, turning me into a shadowed life for the rest of eternity. What was with me? I mean, first Damon, then Edward, and then Damon again. It was always Damon, and even though I tried, he'd always be there. A reminder. My willpower was slowly diminishing and I could feel the barriers crumble, allowing my humanity to fully return, but I fought against it when the thought of going through that pain crossed my mind. I just wasn't strong enough to deal with that pain. Isabel J.'s voice brought me back to my senses, remembering where I was and what I was doing. Locking eyes with him, an involuntary smile crept up on my lips as I drank in his presence. Not only did I notice his looks, but I also noted the potent sweet smell of his blood, imagined how I'd sink my teeth, break sin and allow the flow of his warm blood flow into my mouth and his limbs grow weaker, his muscles anemic as I drained him. No turning back now. You look so delicious, I complimented, my new persona directing my mind into ignoring the conscious that was sending warnings, but instead I acted on my predator part. It was who I was. Reaching up to J's neck, my fingers brushed over the pulsing vein. Fear sparked in his eyes, but I cupped his face, locking gazes with him, my smirk turning into an innocent smile. I am a vampire and suddenly I feel very hungry. His eyes widened and my predatory side enjoyed the growing fear. I liked the way he backed away from me, and with a causal laugh, I hopped off the counter, feeling the veins harden on my face and the incisors elongate, piercing my tongue. I made the purposeful gesture of widening my mouth so he could get a glimpse of his awaiting fate. He should know his life was in my hands. Don't be so judgmental, I cooed, making his eyes widen, especially when he felt the wall behind him. What a turn of events, huh? I could compel him to be quiet. I could compel him to not be afraid, and I could compel him to remain still, but the hunt was always worthwhile. Plus he couldn't get in. I'd locked the door with a spell so no one could get in or hear us either, although the purpose of the spell had been different before as to now. Before another thought, I flashed in front of him, making his heartbeat grow faster, which only encouraged the monster waiting to be unleashed. If I remember correctly, you wanted to get to know me well. This is a part of me. The smirk returned and he tried to push me away, but I remained still before him. My side onto his neck with the grown strength of the smell of his blood, which was circulating faster now with his increase in heart rate. Moving in, I breathed into his neck while he stayed frozen under me, but his labored breathing said it all. Please please Don, he stammered, and when moving back I looked into the piercing fright and betrayal highlighted in his cobalt eyes. He trusted me, he wanted me. Can't you see? This is me. This right here is me. My eyes bore into his, wanting him to understand, but he shook his head, refusing my words, which only frustrated me more. I am a monster, each word emphasized to make the statement true. It was supposed to be true so I could believe it. He shook his head again and I watched in fascination as his shoulders slumped, his rigid posture relaxing slightly, but his eyes remained cautious and alert as he reached up with shaky fingers to cup my cheek as he revealed in a whisper, I don't believe that. The switch wavered under my barrier and I could feel myself returning back. His words seeped through, touching the humanity in me, and I crumbled under his touch, closing my eyes and sighing as I waited for me to come back and claim my mind before the nearby monster arose. Wait, why should I care? Why should I be the one to always give in? Why couldn't I be reckless and uncaring? I didn't want to be human again because that wasn't who I was. The switch, no, I can one T. With a defeated sigh I looked into his eyes before the smirk reappeared. Staring him down I replied in a stern voice, well, I'll just have to convince you again. His building scream was chalked back the minute my teeth sunk into his teeth and I began what I'd promised to do. To satisfy the now unchained monster. DPOV. It was unnerving to stay still knowing that Isabel was shacking up with some random guy. It was irritating to wait the minutes go by remembering the excited look in her eyes as Barbie had praised her choice in a rebound. It was even worse because she said they'd gone on a date, and while I remained perched on the roof of her new home, I became more agitated with each minute that went past and her presence hadn't arrived. It was around 1:00 now and all was silent apart from the light snoring of the old lady Mrs. Flowers. It was who was now asleep. You'd think she'd show more interest in her tenant, especially with the way Isabel had acted when scolding me for killing the lady's husband. Guilt washed over me when recounting the disgusted and disappointment she'd shown directed towards me when finding out the truth. The nature of that argument returned, worsening the guilt as I recalled how she'd informed me of my slip-up that had caused her to flee from my side. My insane obsession with Catherine had ruined my chances of moving on with someone who loved me for me, but I'd broken that trust twice. What was wrong with me? I thought out loud to the still darkness. Bowing my head, I began to roughly tug at my locks in frustration. I was so stupid. Maybe Isabel deserved someone like the jack guy she was with. She deserved someone that didn't have any baggage, someone that wouldn't give her any bullshit. Someone that wouldn't repeatedly break her heart. But even though what I was thinking was 100% true, I couldn't imagine a life where I let her go. I couldn't picture having her beside someone other than me. I couldn't give up because she was worth fighting for and because my thought of before were truthful. As she did deserve better, I would become better. I would show her that I could be what she needed. BPOV. Pulling my stained lips away from his neck, I used the back of my arm to wipe the blood from my lips. Jay hung to my body, his limbs flailing as he groaned. The smirk on my lips remained intact as I hoisted him up, letting him lean on the wall. My fingers still grasped his collar to make him look at me. Ah, poor baby. Sarcasm dripped in my words as I patted his cheek in attempts to raise his lolling head. Grabbing his chin, I forced him to lock his droopy eyes with mine. Listen up, I instructed as I began my compulsion. Opening my mouth, I readied to erase his memory but decided against it. The human could be useful to me. You gonna keep quiet about the real me and we'll continue on like we wanted, but you'll keep my secret. Okay. I smiled sweetly as he gave a weak smile, his eyes still drooped though. Needing him to be alive, I bit my wrist and held it to his lips. Drink. It seemed he didn't need any more encouraging as his lips wrapped around the bite and he began to suck onto it, drinking in the blood. Good boy, I teased with a smirk as he finally relaxed into me after his satisfaction. What now? I mused, then looked down when hearing the light snore. His wound had already began to heal, so I fixed his collar then dragged his body to the toilet cubicle. Balancing him, I pulled on his jeans, buckling the belt, and was about to leave him as he slumped to the ground, but the guilt nagged at me, so I sighed then lifted him. Walking out of the bathroom, I pushed open the door, peeking out for anyone suspicious, but no one was looking my way, so I maneuvered Jay on my shoulders to lug him towards an empty booth. Whoa there, lil lady, a gentle teenage male voice stopped me, grabbing Jay by the other side. I looked up to be met with Caroline's snack bloodbank boy toy, take your pick. He's the one who'd almost been bitten by a werewolf but almost bitten by Caroline. Hey, I smiled sheepishly then balanced Jay. He really wasn't heavy, but Matt didn't have to think so. Found him passed out when leaving the ladies' room. Guess he was a bit hammered, I played my story rolling my eyes. Blondie blue eyes, probably typical jock, smiled back at me. Bit heavy for you isn't he? He mused and I laughed lightly as he took him from me then bit back the groan from his weight. Just a bit, I mused, and he quickly stumbled into a booth, placing him on the seat before sighing in relief then turning to me. I am sure he'll sleep it off, he sighed, still breathing heavily. I am mad by the way he stretched out his hand. Isabel, I smiled, shaking his hand. You're a friend of Caroline, are you not? My question was innocent. His eyes grew guarded as he should be before answering me. Yeah, how do you know her? I saw you guys together at the Salvatore house party, shrugging nonchalantly to put him at ease, and it worked because his shoulders slumped in relaxation. He crossed his arms over his chest before asking wondrously, you were at that crazy night? I answered his question and he laughed with me. I was talking about something else entirely, like the fact I was bitten by a werewolf, but it was all pretty crazy for everyone, right? Sure was. How do you know the Salvatores? He questioned, taking interest in the fact they weren't complete loners. Stefan is a distant cousin of mine, I smiled at that. It was practically true, maybe even siblings with our bond. I did consider Stefan as being like a brother to me. Listen, Matt, it was nice talking to you, but I got a dash, glancing at the clock. Truthfully, I was just tired, I needed some sleep. When my emotions went haywire, it took a lot out of me, and all I could think of was the bed waiting for me at Mrs. Flower's place. Matt understood and he unfolded his arms to reach out his hand once more. Sure. It was nice meeting you, Isabel. He seemed like a nice person and clearly important or linked in some way to Elena, so I'll be sure not to bite him. He didn't seem to be a threat either, so that was okay. With a final kind smile, I replied, friends call me Izzy or Iz. I'll remember. That was all he said, with a secretive tug of his lips as I began to walk away. Once I was outside, I dashed to my bike, which now had been accompanied by a black Mercedes next to it, so I had to ease myself to my bike. Straightening out my dress even though it was already wrinkled, I sighed when catching sight of the magnificence of the Harley. Jumping on, I decided to accelerate the maximum, so I curved out of the Mystic Grill's parking lot in half a second to head back into my temporary home, Mrs. Flower's cottage. Wind billowed in my hair, fanning it behind me as the bike raced on into the surprisingly deserted road. I reveled in the sensation of the adrenaline rising further, overwhelming my adrenalized bloodstream. Woo, I screamed in excitement, the surrounding blurred past me, heightening the rush. My words were cut off as the series of visions hit me. It had been quite a while for my visions due to an emotional wreck. I stepped on the brakes and skidded to a stop as I watched the vision unfold. Mason glanced around his surroundings, someone on edge or nervous. He then walked up to a black car. Couldn't really make it out as it was dark. He opened the door and slid in. The back of head was clear in my vision, but I couldn't make out the womanly figure next to him in the darkness, only her hair, which seemed long and wavy. Sure took you time. Do you have it? Instantly I recognized the callous-filled voice that was Catherine's. With my revelation brought her exposure to my vision as she turned to Mason with her devilish smirk. Yep, he smirked. Clearly he had the upper hand in this. When he didn't hand over what he was supposed to, she pouted, staring at him with wide eyes as she asked, well, give it to me. Mason's resolve was wavering and I watched as his lip trembled before asking why. Don't you trust me? She cooed in her sugar-coated voice. It was quite disgusting actually. I mean, I know I do it, but at least I hold some dignity, plus I am younger in human years, so it works. What happens when I give it to you? He fretted. We both ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after, she mused, but forcing her sincerity. I love you, Mason, you know that. There was that voice again. She moved in and began to kiss up his jaw and his breathing grew heavy. I hoped there was more to this vision than them getting it on. I'll bring it tomorrow, he sighed before capturing her lips again in a more heated kiss. Now I got her plan D. What should I do next? STPOV. Picking up my phone, I saw the caller ID, not hesitating to answer. Everything okay? I answered the phone, worried she was breaking down again. I hadn't talked to her for over 24 hours, so I wasn't sure about her well-being. She darkly chuckled over the phone before tutting me. Not everything has to be doom and gloom, Stephanie, she joked, and I just shook my head. I was still worried about her, but I liked to hear the life creeping back into her voice. Then what's up? Perching myself on the edge of the armchair with my arms crossed as I waited for her. I need your help. BPOV. Sleep started out to decease, so I rolled to the side with a moan. My arms found a sturdy form. Curious, I began to fumble because the sleep still stuck in my closed eyes. Ooh, abs muscle, greater muscle, return to the abs, decrease low O. What a manner to wake me up. His voice became gruff and familiar. The sound alerted me, bringing me lower back to truth as my eyes snapped open. Last night time again, encasing my thoughts as I appeared into the nice and cozy blue eyes staring up at me, his hair barely messed and the curls caught out in random places, a lazy smirk in location which then became a small crooked grin as I rose my head to fulfill his stare. Morning, he smiled, lightly stroking my hair, however moved to graze down my backbone as I rose up from the bed. Looking down at his body, I stared at what I would been touching. He positioned his muscled fingers behind his head as he smugly stared up at me. His lickable abs tempted me further as I noticed how they flexed with his movements. Morning, I tore my gaze away to reply. My voice sounded croaky. Sleep nevertheless caused it. Tiredly, I ran free palms through my hair, shaking the mess piled on my head. I should look a multitude. Nah, I suppose you look fabulous, he argued, and that I laughed but froze while my eyes darted to the clock at the away's wall. Is that the time? Stoning up from the bed in alarm. Oh shit. Frantically searching through my dresser for something close to perfect, seeing as time become jogging out. My eyes did a double take on the blue chiffon get dressed with a thin brown belt, or the opposite option become a yellow shirt dress with a similar brown belt. Yellow 1's high quality, J inputted, and I grew to become to face him. He pulled himself up so he become resting on the headboard. You suspect? I asked and pulled out the dress after he nodded. Agreeing with him, I located the blouse get dressed at the bed before including, I am gonna jump inside the bathe. So will I, he grinned, then moved away from bed, grabbed me via the waist, then threw me over his shoulder, making me squeal in pride as he hauled us outdoor my bedroom. I used to be nevertheless wearing my black lace Victoria Mystery underwear even as he become in boxers, which he must be simply placed on as my fumbling had located him exposed. Be quiet, Mrs. Flower S will wake up, I hissed, but my giggle burst through the seriousness of my voice. Once we were inside the shower, he reached up to replace it on, then set me down under the hot spray of water and then stepped in beside me. Jay slowly lipped within the bathe with me, and then helped to take off my bra whilst I smiled at the sensation of being wanted, but also the warm drops of water fall on my face. His warm warmth was a reminder of his humanity, and I felt as he pressed himself up towards me. Pushing down my underclothes, I set it apart and allowed him to start to lather my body with the tropical shower gel. The smell started out to surround the whole toilet as he added greater to my body. Leaning back, I laid my head onto his shoulder, taking part in how he was near me and how he become showing his take care of me. Even though he changed into pressured, I didn't honestly care. I wanted this. Maybe I am slightly crazy, who knows. He labored my hair, massaging my scalp with the strawberry shampoo. Then he rinsed my hair, moving directly to the relaxation of my body. Your pores and skin is so tender, he murmured while his fingers labored wonders on my shoulders. Then he dipped right down to path kisses down my neck. His warm breath tickled my skin and that I squirmed. So is yours, I smiled, then became to him, wanting him to be close once more, which advised me to crash my lips to his another time. Without delay he claimed them and pulled my body, crushing me to him. Final nighttime's wild nighttime back, and that I smirked against his lips, but best for a 2D earlier than he slipped his tongue into my mouth. If we hold, we may not be getting out, I warned in a murmur in opposition to his lips, but he absolutely shrugged with a grunt, then driven me onto the glass and ravaged my lips greater fiercely. The whole thing approximately, his touch felt wrong and his arms made me lengthy for any other s. Guilt threatened to fill my thoughts, however I pushed it away as I reluctantly my arms rested on his chest and pushed him off me, giving him a caution mock glare. I need to go, biting my lip, tasting him on my tongue. He closed the distance and smirked, answering, we want to move. His arms engulfed mine and that I stared up at him through the water trickling down my face. I do not deserve you, I murmured, and he smiled, pushing apart the moist hair stuck to my cheeks, then cupped my face as he gazed intently in my eyes. You deserve so much higher. His words were bitterly sweet and the pain struck me with his phrases. I would handled him so unfairly. Feeding off him. Status him up. The whole lot I did. I bit you. 2 times. I exclaimed, however my expression fell in marvel as he chuckled. His eyes glazed over as he remembered something and recited almost automatically, do not worry, didn't he experience a issue? Then mild sparkled in his eyes. Self-hatred became overwhelming as I remembered my compulsion. I needed to be robust nowadays, and a lot of these negative feelings have been piling up, so I saved my wavering switch firmly on. It is right you did not feel anything, I smirked. Rising on my toes, I kissed his nose. As a whole lot as I like the idea of hot steamy shower sex, we gonna ought to postpone that, decreasing my head as I gazed up at him, then kissed his cheek in brief before stepping out of the shower, knowing he turned into following my lead after switching off the water. I wrapped a towel around him and passed him the pink fluffy guest towels stored through Mrs. Flora. He gave me a glance gesturing to the coloration, however I clearly smirked. Water dripped down his body as well as his now glossy hair, which appeared almost black now. With a knowing smile, he wrapped the pink towel around his waist earlier than following me out of the rest room, his arm round my shoulders. Morning pricey Mrs. Plant Life voice startled me as I hadn't even heard her footsteps or her awakening. Turning on my footing, I confronted her with a wry smile. Jay then observed my lead, seeming embarrassed as he scratched the again of his neck while sending a small smile and supplying a low greeting. "Oh, what's up, Mrs. Flora?" My hands continued to play with J's palms unconsciously. "This is Jay. He is a great pal of mine." My phrases held no innocence, with the mischievous glint in my eyes playing as I stated the phrase friend. Jay shyly supplied a murmured greeting, nonetheless staring down. "Quality to satisfy you," she answered. However, I did not leave out the appreciative glance over she gave Jay, and a knowing grin played on my lips. "Could you two like some breakfast?" Her try of improving from J's muscled abs changed into funny. "Absolutely, we in a hurry. Maybe all over again," turning down the offer, which she regarded barely disenchanted about. "We are definitely going to the city's picnic. Aren't you?" "I used to be, however I do not sense as much as it. I'll just visit the following one." She smiled and I zoned in on her habit of fingering her wedding ceremony band. It angered me greater remembering the person accountable of getting rid of her husband. "Okay, Mrs. Flora. Maybe I'll catch you later." "You better. I am making spaghetti bologna sufficient for 3 this night," she added, a wicked glint in her eyes as she stared up at Jay, who with no trouble discovered the wall grater interesting at that point. His cheeks heated up from the burning embarrassment. "I suppose you have burdened him sufficient," laughing at both of them. Jay turned to me, rolling his eyes, and that I laughed again. "Goodbye." We both stood up, geared up to depart. Jay moved around me and then took her hand. "Satisfactory to satisfy you, Mrs. Flora." Jay shook her hand in politeness. He then moved again and slung his arm over my shoulder, so I took his hands, gambling with them as we walked in the direction of the door. "Do not do whatever I would not do," she referred to as "after us." J's arm become now round my waist, maintaining me near his aspect as he added me to some of his many, many friends. Bet he become quite widely known around this metropolis. "You okay, baby?" he asked me, taking my hand in his and stroking his thumb on my wrist in a comforting way. I took a fleeting second to mesmerize how his little gestures showed his affection for me. Looking lower back up, I gave a reassuring smile, then kissed his cheek. "I am okay," I whispered in his ear, my cheek pressed in opposition to his but moved back when his cologne have become too strong. "I am just gonna go wander about, locate something to do," smiling at him. "Do you need me to come with you?" he supplied. However, I stuck his reluctance to go away his buddies, so I shook my head. "It's cool, you stay," smiling with a small wave stent his manner then to his pals. I must hold up my innocent charade. I used to be about to pull away whilst he gripped my wrist, turning me round to stand him, and before I could understand, his mouth was crashed onto mine. His arms grabbed the lower back of my neck and his tongue slipped into my mouth, deepening the kiss, and I gripped his T-blouse, wanting to push him away with the constructing sickening guilt, but his contact jogged my memory. He desired me. Even supposing now not compelled, Jay had desired me. He smiled, a cheeky glint in his eyes with a sparkle of mild in them. "See ya," become my meek reply earlier than I stumbled 1-2 dazed far away from him. I ought to vaguely pay attention, his pals congratulating him on our dating, however that made me feel even sicker as I fell onto the nearby tree, resting my brow onto the hard bark to seize my breath as the cool breeze blew in my hair. "Isabel, wasn't he?" questioning. Clearly Stefan's voice broke me from my reverie, and that I peeked from at the back of the tree to peer him speaking to Mason. "Oh, fantastic," please observe the heavy sarcasm. "Agree with Stefan to be all chivalrous and are seeking for forgiveness. It was a blessing and a curse. Combating different human beings' battles become innate for him, and that I actually was hoping one day it would not get him killed." Mason then shifted on his footing and crossed his fingers. "No, she wasn't. Why might she do something like that?" He whined and that I rolled my eyes at his. Perhaps it is the fact that you almost killed her. Stefan's voice seethed with sarcasm and I desired to snicker but stored quiet, not trying them to understand I used to be listening. How did she find the remedy? Panic set in, however then I remembered that Stefan did not realize both are as a minimum. I do not assume he knows. The most effective person I'd trusted with that information was Damon, but he's into that complete top hand over Stefan issue, so I doubt he informed Stefan. It really is for me to recognize Mason, Stefan cleverly deduced, making it seem as if he withheld preferred records. Perhaps we are able to use it towards him someday. We promise now not to make any greater assaults towards you. Isabel turned into appearing on anger. She wasn't he herself, he persisted, looking to justify my errors. Mason gave a sarcastic snort. You count on me to agree with you. There's no purpose why we cannot just live within the identical metropolis in peace. Stefan difficult him up a piece, will you? So what now? Mason requested, leaning back onto his variety rover. Stefan seemed to ponder over something earlier, then flippantly offering, truce. A truce. A truce, Stefan confirmed, protecting out his hand for Mason, who stared at it as if the gesture turned into alien. Earlier then he took a deep breath and clasped Stefan's hand and shook it lightly. Great. Truce. Hairs at the back of my neck stood up, alert with the close proximity of the individual at the back of me, their frame heat radiating my lower back. His musky cologne filled the environment around us, a palm become located at the bark of the tree next to me, and I already knew who it become. Earlier than the character spoke in an attractive manner. My brother, constantly the do-gooder, he whispered. Taking a calming breath, I grew to become to stand him, nonetheless using the tree as a base to stabilize me. He loomed over me. The aroma of his cologne had intensified. He changed into wearing his signature leather-based jacket, a dark blue T-blouse beneath with dark jeans. His blue eyes had been hidden below the darkest shades, and I wasn't positive whether or not I was grateful or saddened by way of that reality. Mr. Salvatore, I sighed, whether or not in defeat and in remedy I used to be unsure. Isabel, he answered inside the equal tone. Failed to suppose picnics had been your component, I teased, and he chuckled gently. I had neglected that sound. Softly, his husky whisper was almost secretive. I may want to say the same component. He leaned forward an inch and I knew we had been playing on risky territory, so I dodged his arm, moving away from the tree, placing space among us. He shrugged it off and observed me, but I started out to stroll closer to the picnic desk, hoping my smile masked my pain. However, I ought to feel my legs waver and my chest constrict. Selecting up the cup from the table, every other imaginative and prescient hit me. You have vampires residing proper under your nose. Mason's eyes were panicked and guarded, however additionally fearful, as they darted around in fear in their conversation being heard. The imaginative and prescient revealed who he was talking to, and that I inwardly tutted. What are you talking approximately? The sheriff requested in surprise. Damon Salvatore, he simple stated with a grave voice. Oh Mason. You could not simply go away, it could you? The sheriff shook her head in denial, not looking to accept as true with Damon would betray her, specifically after everything he'd completed for the town. What? No, Damon is my buddy. Her loyalty was surprising, however the fierce look in her eyes became fading. No, he's got us all fooled. Him and his brother. And Mason paused, and the uncertainty in his eyes informed me everything I had to realize. He changed into going to condemn me too. It was clear. What? The sheriff entreated. They have got a pal. She's new in town and she or he is likewise certainly one of them, and there it become. Properly, Mason, you just sealed your fate. It's Isabel. I will point her out for you, he offered while the sheriff grew extra bemused. Permit us do it. Mason then began the rambling of his plan, and I discovered it to be very bland and really unoriginal. Oh yeah, vervain within the lemonade. However, did you think of that? Isabel. Isa. Damon shook me and I blinked for some moments before my imaginative and prescient became cleared back into truth. A smirk on my lips as I stared innocently up at him. I am gonna be proper back. I used to be prepared to depart, but he stopped me, asking with a matching smirk, what is that appearance? What look? The attractive devilish smirk you bought on, he quirked, and that I simply shrugged innocently, ignoring that he stated sexy. I haven't any concept what you speak me about, turning to leave, however then remembered to add BTW don't move near the picnic table. Warned Stefan approximately it too, turning my expression serious in order that he knew this wasn't a sport. What is going on? Mason's lower back up plan smirking over again before I fast hurried away earlier than he ought to interrogate me anymore. Time for Mason to get a taste of his personal remedy. Bonnie become within the second of completing her component, and I may want to pay attention as Mason writhed in ache from the aneurysm she become causing witchy juju, so I found out myself from in the back of the wall and watched as Damon got Mason from the ground, choosing him up and throwing him inside the return of the auto. He then grew to become walking directly up to me, and that I involuntarily took a small step again. However, the determined thrive in him brought about him to step forwards once more. Dante, he pleaded, his resolute in that one phrase. What do you need? My attempt at sounding aggravated turned into ruined with the wavering in my tone. His eyebrow shot up earlier than leveling with the alternative. He then ran a hand through his hair in what I ought to only understand as melancholy. The determination left his face only to be overtaken with a lost expression in his eyes. He parted his lips as if to say something but shut it once more. Meet you on the house. I smiled meekly. The air appeared to have left my chest because it constricted with each second he remained close, but the will to the touch him grew stronger with the pull he had over me. A heavy sigh become launched, his eyes persevered to maintain over me, and that I fought the urge to reach as much as easy over the creases that had fashioned on his brow. See you then, he in the end stated. Turning to face the Bennett witch, I smiled earlier than thanking her. Thank you, Bonnie. With a mirroring smile, she responded nearly smugly, it's pleasant. You did proper, Bennett, providing a praise which regarded to be rare with me these days, so I am hoping she favored my goodwill. Her expression turned slightly sinister earlier than adding in a stern voice, I failed to do it for you. I understand. You probably did it for Elena. Her name fell like acid from my tongue, and I knew Bonnie had caught directly to that. I should have informed her what a manipulative domestic wrecker her friend changed into. However, dragging myself deeper into the 90,210 shit simply wasn't my style. Thank you, Bonnie, I brought sincerely, yet again before hopping onto the motorbike and driving away. Revenge receives me hungry. All that paintings plotting a person's death got to me, so I would prevent on the Mystic Grill and pick out myself up a takeaway. BPOV. Wakey, I patted his cheek and watched as his head lolled to the aspect as he mumbled something incoherent. Come on, Mason, I groaned, the weight become turning into tiring, and I was on my 6th glass of absinthe shot. Downing that one, I permit the bitter fiery taste tingle my tongue earlier than licking my lips as I savored the burning flavor as I waited. I might arrived at the house when Damon and Stefan had commenced to strap Mason's frame in a chair, but I might stop them due to the fact I knew he would not run if it changed into just me. Now all I had turned into time as I waited for his conscience to awaken. He commenced to return round, then blinked his eyes for a while before locking eyes with me, then becoming wide-eyed and started out scrambling far away from me, clutching his chest at the same time as gasping for the air. In the end rolling my eyes at him before pouring myself every other drink into the crystal glass. Damon probably wouldn't be satisfied that I was knocking returned his collection of alcohol, however then again I failed to care, did I? He slowly stood up, groaning with the actions, then clutched his head before asking in an angered grunt, what am I doing right here? He stumbled in his step, swaying a bit before locating his balance. Cannot I spend some time with, considered one of my oldest buddies. I knew my innocent charade wouldn't work, however it did assist in riling him up. That changed into always fun. Cut the crap, Isabel, he growled, sighing. High quality once more, rolling my eyes as I walked over to the bookcase. I want solutions, telling him the truth casually. Depends if you ask the proper questions. His solution caught my attention, and that I cut my attention off the books and again to him. Why did you chunk me? A coy smile on my lips as I teased him. In go back he stepped forward and tried to be particularly menacing, however I crossed my hands, hitching an eyebrow, displaying him that he couldn't frighten me. Why did you stab me? He snarled back, anger fired in his eyes. Tit for tat, he grumbled with my words. Oh, recover from it, it is not such as you died, reaching as much as ruffle his hair, but he shook me off, turning far away from me. Shrugging off his rejection, I discreetly added. Walking round him, I placed myself in front of him and gave him a warning smile. I recognize all about your werewolf legends this time. I labored my innocence trying to get him to agree with me. Handiest due to the fact I used to be stupid enough to trust you, he scolded. Rolling my eyes at his melodramatic way, I waved him off earlier than answering definitely. Do not flatter yourself, I did my personal research. He narrowed his eyes at me, however, nevertheless made no flow to leave. I took the silent possibility to pour the each folks some of the scotch. He kept his eyes skilled on me, and that I decided it turned into safe to pass no man's land now. Speak me of dogs, I turned on my heel, tracing the rim of the glass earlier than searching up into his eyes as I requested, in which is your winch. My nonchalant tone failed to escape him as he shook his head. I don't know what you re, talking approximately. He looked away, however we each knew I had him. Oh please, walking closer. I handed him the glass, which he shook his head to, so I downed his drink besides. I needed to be drunk for this bloodbath. Catherine, this is the girl you left me for. I stuck his lips tug upward slightly before he asked, why? Are you jealous? His eyes developing dark and the underlying need become clean to locate. Gotcha. I wasn't going to. I faded away, looking down for a second until I ought to experience his eyes on me. Snapping my eyes lower back to him, I began taking walks up to him, placing my palm on his slightly heated pores and skin, but now not as flaming because the qualities I mentally mentioned. He instinctively leaned in and inhaled my odor, but then stiffened below my contact as he remembered something. I am jealous due to the fact. Pausing for the effect, I pulled away, then became away. A effective smirk rose my lips as I heard his drawing near steps. His fingers wrapped round my arm, turning me to face him. Why? He coaxed, his voice now softer. Slowly I shook my head, refusing to fulfill his eyes. Tell me. It become his flip to cup my face into each his arms, forcing me to gaze into his eyes. Because I fell for you, the word love refusing to fall from my lips. I fell tough, adding in an even softer extent. Why failed to you say so earlier than? His voice became gently as his contact as he saw my vulnerability. Pleased with myself, I tried to preserve my mask intact. Wait, why didn't I say this before? Due to the fact I failed to consider myself. I failed to want to harm you. It sounded just like the proper issue to mention. He scrutinized my face for what seemed like an endless minute earlier. Then I peeked on the clock to see that time became going for walks out, so I determined to move this alongside. Inching nearer, I sent him a look of consider earlier than grazing my lips over his, tempting his libido with an achingly sluggish motion. Earlier than I knew it, he answered to me through pulling me to him. Fierce as he ravaged my lips, pulling my hair, then pushing us each so that I crashed onto the wall. Peeking open an eye, I saw his eyes had been closed close without a doubt inside the second. I gasped at his forwardness while his palms fumbled with the buttons of my shirt, which alerted me back to the plan, so I waited as he commenced to push them down while I began to unbutton his shirt, then driven it off his shoulders, making my actions as frantic as possible. His lips persevered to triumph over mine with need, and I did my first class to reply with the same enthusiasm, with a few gasps and moans which appeared to excite him similarly. Oh Isabel, he moaned towards my neck once I floor myself to him. I lamely offered, however it seemed he changed into past being concerned. Whilst he began to undo my jeans buttons, I slowly ran my palm up and down his chest. Resting it on his heartbeat, I pulled return to look him in the eyes. Our breaths had been choppy, lust become clean in his eyes, and I knew I had him. My lips tugged upwards as I released a smooth whisper, sorry. Confusion struck, his eyes widened with no how. He didn't get to complete due to the fact Damon's hand became already through his back, grabbing his chest. My frame reacted to Damon's appearance, but in a bad way. I crouched back barely, however, then realized the ridiculousness by squaring my shoulders once more and jutting out my jaw. However, Damon had already caught my response. Taking a second to fasten eyes with him and noticed the dark look in his eyes, jealousy burning in them earlier than speedy, paying interest again to the assignment. A necessity, particularly as on Catherine's facet. My voice was grave, and that I could not find it in myself to look him inside the eyes, knowing I might sentenced his loss of life, rattling my humanity. Sooner or later, sizing myself up, I was met with a look of sheer horror mingled with his pain. Speedy pushing away the regret, I delivered menacingly, Catherine will rip your coronary heart out, I whispered. Damon twisted his hand, and I watched as Mason's eyes grew wide-eyed and bloodshot, his mouth extensive as he gasped in ache. Permit S do it for her. Damon's poker face wavered while he pulled his heart out and casually slung it across the room, into the burning fire. Really killing Mason wasn't trouble for him. Mason's heartless body fell on his knees, falling face down onto the carpet with a thump. Performing quickly, I bent down and searched through his wallet, smiling when I found my reward in his left jacket pocket. The moonstone was stained along with his blood as were my hands and that I wiped it on my denims before setting it in my pocket. Stefan perked up with hobby, what's it? Time will inform. I smiled sweetly and watched as Damon opened his mouth to ask something however stopped himself. Silence then followed as me and Stefan stared at the lifeless frame that was beginning to stain the carpet. Damon glanced at me as if expecting me to come up with the choice, but it turns out I did not should because Stefan selected that second to burst through the doorways with a composed expression as he crossed over to us. Damon then stopped, reverted his hobby at the body at the ground, then frowned up. He's getting blood at the carpet. He scowled, exerting his anger onto the lifeless body that turned into as soon as a pal. That has a tendency to take place, Stefan joked, lifting my spirits a little. Bet broody Stefan is away in a laugh. Stefan is out to play. I am guessing the inclusion in the homicide positioned him on a few sort of hype. Damon had observed Stefan's changed demeanor as he raised an eyebrow at his ordinary uptight brother, however Stefan shrugged him off passively. What now? I mused, breaking the lengthening silence. Damon moved forward, poking his foot out, then nudging Mason's limp frame to make sure he became lifeless, as if he had any doubts it was insulting. We burn the body and stay fortuitously ever after, he quirked. How about you burn the body while I go get some sleep? I commenced to move around him, but my body reacted once I edged near him. A prickling warmth burnt my pores and skin, however I ignored it, trying to transport far away from him as quick as possible. Issa, he known as after me, and for some cause my frame best accompanied him because I finished in my tracks and turned round to face him. Determination lit in his eyes as he made his manner to me, stopping best inches far from me. A strong pull called for Damon. The want to have him near me rose, however I fought it returned. The determination now mixed with self-belief as he took a better step to me. His chest turned into now on mine and I could feel his fast heartbeat, which in all likelihood matched mine. The smart issue might have been to transport away, even leave, however I chose to be silly. He paused, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, then he finally regarded up at me. His blue eyes held a deep emotion that I didn't need to examine. His lips parted and that I should get inebriated off the scotch-stained breed, however I should scent the taint of the peppermint. In conjunction with the intoxicating scent become the colander leather. Not an excessive amount of no longer too little, simply proper. Quoting Goldilocks, it really is a brand new low even for me. Cat, were given your tongue. My apprehensive chuckle came out raspy because it wavered while I stared up into the soulful, open blue eyes. I simply desired what I imply is fuck. He stammered over his lost phrases, becoming increasingly more annoyed with each strive. Spit it out, raining within the giggle that turned into close to leaving my lips. Rolling my eyes, I crossed my arms, combating the urge to touch him by means of balling up my fists and clenching them together tightly. His eyes darted all the way down to my chest and a pained appearance flashed in his eyes. His tongue darted out to sweep alongside his bottom lip and I discovered myself mimicking the motion. Isabel, I omit you, I miss us. Please communicate to me, he blurted out in a hurry, a twinge of torture illuminating his glassy blue eyes. Earlier than finishing the phrases, I zoomed out of the house, landing lower back onto the rain-soaked wooded door. The bricks held the building pungent of the mold, but I used to be beyond caring even as it grew overwhelming to my senses. The rain had stopped even though to my avail, so my hitched breaths gasped inside the dampened earth scent. Nature in its truer form. The wealthy soil aroma filled my senses and that I felt comfy. Vegetation were given existence with the rainfall and that I could feel the strength of the earth's strength. Nature turned into practically a witch's exceptional friend. I commenced to consider all of the specific flower species so that it will keep the threatening mind of a so-known as vampire at bay, but my mind drifted as Mason's phone vibrated in my pocket, a hole burning via my denims. Certain took it slow, she sneered, and I suppressed the constructing growl which as an alternative rumbled my throat. With a sarcastic smile which fell as quick because it rose, not your boy toy. I wasn't definitely in the temper for her Tom and Jerry video games, but it needed to be executed. She let out a growl of frustration in reputation of my voice. Isabel, she sugar-coated her bitter words full of venom, but the underlying annoyance and disbelief did not go neglected. That is what they call me, I grinned despite the fact that she couldn't see me. I was hoping she ought to hear my underlying leisure. Isabella, she snarled, how are you alive? And there it became, the million-dollar question. Lifting my leg, I slung it over the bike. I paused, sitting for some time with my toes propped up on the pedestals, the engine revving loudly. Recalling Catherine's question, I responded secretively. I understand humans. My eyes have been still skilled on the horizon in the distance. Stars glittered the sky, adorning it with the glowing shiny lights. Crickets chirped in the empty silence. What are you doing with Mason's phone? She growled over the road. My eyebrow raised in question of her tone earlier than understanding she wasn't round pressure of habit I wager. It's bizarre when human beings question my energy via defying me. When I failed to answer, she broke the silence, in which is he. Her voice barely calmer, however she changed into straining with retaining the manage over her fury. A sadistic smile on my lips as I ran a finger along the indoors leather causally while answering, oh, he is inside the residence, despite the fact that I was positive the paused silence was making her more paranoid. After listening to the trade in her once calm breathing, I determined to place her out of her misery even though his coronary heart's on fireplace. Literally this time my mischievous leisure changed into obtrusive on my face. What did you do? Her strive at being menacing become comical to me. Crossing my palms, all sign of pride from her pain turned into erased because it become time she knew who she became messing with. I ended your plan D. My poker face held company as I stared off into the eerie night time outside the some distance window. Words escaped her for a second earlier than she accrued herself to all over again in still ineffective fear in me. It's now not my simplest plan. You shish. Setting a stop to her rambling, I interfered with a causal oh I do. She kept silent over this, probably deliberating her next plan. However, whatever it became, I'd make my pass worse. You're circulate, Ms. Catherine, I smirked. Just as I was approximately to hang up the cell phone, she desperately introduced. Simply keep in mind that people who get in my way suffer top-notch results. Rolling me yes. I froze when listening to her following phrases. You should recognize that. To think that she had the audacity to ring a bell in me of my almost demise. Gotta respect her braveness though. It is Petrova's for you, in no way understanding when to prevent. Constantly looking extra properly. She wasn't going to have the ultimate word. Her chance did not move overlooked, however it didn't create any fear, but alternatively I grew angrier. And also you have to don't forget now not to clutter with someone who has touch with and unique. Her fear felt tangible almost on my tongue. After some seconds of silence and me taking note of heavy respiratory that had picked up pace, she finally replied, why you re-bluffing? The corner of my lips slightly curved together with her unintentional stutter. Attempt me. Every other smirk performed on my lips. Before she should name my bluff, I delivered in a dark, sinister tone, in case you need Klaus to discover your whereabouts. This time it wasn't up to me to hang up as she cut the decision and the cell phone line went dead. Victory become in my draw close and I positive as hell could make the maximum of it. KPOV. Bitch. Fucking bitch. Killing Mason, wrong move, and if she thought she could scare me with her threats, she was wrong. And it was because of her interference that I would be pushed to return the favor. Take someone away from me and I'd do the same. It was unbelievable that even Isabel had fallen for Elena's damsel in distress ploy and was now one of her protectors. Fuck sake. There was nothing special about the girl. Why is it that everyone is ready to put their lives on the line for the pathetic human? Always Elena. So before moving on to my next plan, it was time for revenge. If Isabel thought she could scare me easily, she had another thing coming. Picking up the phone, I dialed the number, smiling as I heard the tone before the innocence of the human's voice as she greeted with a pleasant hello. You right, Isabel. It is my move. BPOV. I'd thought after last night's victory, I'd be waking with a smile, but instead I woke heavy-hearted and feeling lost. Everything I'd buried with the use of the switch is now on the surface, and I knew that my strength of maintaining this switch was limited, and slowly I was even losing the point of its use. Remorse had consumed me after leaving the bar last night when remembering the blood I'd taken to satisfy my thirst. 4 college guys didn't kill them, but I still drank, and if I'd kept on for a few more minutes, their lives would have been gone. I was disgusted with myself knowing that I'd simply left their limp bodies in a booth at the Mystic Grill. Guilt filled me when I returned home and found 17 missed calls, 8 messages all asking about my whereabouts and if I was okay, all from Jay. He had been so good to me, even taking the time to call and check on me. I knew his want and lust still existed, and all I'd compelled was to rid him of his fear. Pain overtook it when recalling how I'd run away from my humanity when Damon almost said those words, but I don't think I could have handled it hearing him say those 3 words after using them when referring to Elena and Catherine. Regret ate up my thoughts knowing I'd taken Mason's life. Sure he'd tried to kill me and he was working with Catherine, but the poor guy didn't know any better. He thought he was loved but was actually being used. I could relate. I couldn't do this. I couldn't analyze my humanity, not now. Rolling over on the bed, pushing the flower-patterned covers away to sit up on the edge of the bed, but froze when hearing the rustle on the roof. "Go home, Damon." The 3 words were in a stern voice, hard and slipped tone. The sound of the wind rose and filtered through my window before I felt the pull strengthen, as did the smell of his vodka-induced breath, his musky cologne and the scent of his leather. "Don't make me." His heated breath tickled the back of my neck with his pleading sigh as he pressed himself onto my back butt. His fingers reached for my hair only to bring it behind my back, exposing my bare shoulder to him, seeing as I was dressed in a white tank top and blue pajama shorts. The way in which his fingers had ghosted a touch onto my collarbone brought the surfacing emotions to erupt, and I felt my heart constrict with the overwhelming feelings. Please don't." Tears were on the verge of falling, but I fought harder to switch it all off. Everything was easier when I couldn't feel Isabel. In an instant, he had himself placed at my feet, my hand in his palm, and I wished my body would cooperate with what was safe by pulling myself away, but I remained still under his burning touch with a simple graze of his fingers. "Don't make me go." He sounded so pained that it was enough to undone the bind I had on my emotions. His anguish was enough to release mine, bringing every emotion to the surface, causing my whole body to transpire with vigorous tremors that trembled my whole frame. "Isa," he sighed in question, wonder and worry lacing his tone. Clutching head, the thoughts had brought a burning ache into my mind, and I could feel as darkness seeped in, blood trickled down my nose and the smell brought the dizziness. Faintly, I could hear Damon's urgent voice shout at me as he shook me by the shoulders, but my body had shut down, unresponsive as he continued to shake me and patting my cheek. My eyelids drooped and I succumbed to the darkness that awaited. ELPOV. It was decided I would go and see Stefan today. It had been too long and I missed him so much, my heart ached with his lengthened absence. Calling hadn't worked, as it rang for a while before he'd cancel my call. Each time he rejected me, it was a blow to my chest, and even thought it hurt me. I knew it was understandable. I'd acted as Catherine, something I'd never wanted to do. I needed to see him, which was why I was stood outside the Salvatore, boarding outside now, my fist raised to the door, but I made no move to knock. Courage was lost on me as I continued to stare at the mahogany wood in silence, my breathing growing heavier with each second I waited. What would I say? Would he listen? Would we ever be the same again? I already knew the answer to that last question. I just hope I'd be wrong. Finally using up the courage I'd tied to master, I moved my fist back ready to knock, but was beat to it as the door flung open, the surprise making me stumble back, and I was met with Stefan's surprised gaze as he stared expectantly at me. When I didn't say anything, he chose to speak first. "I could hear you," he revealed, with narrowed eyes before he abruptly turned around, walking into their living room, leaving the door open. Taking another deep breath, I walked inside and shut the door slowly before trailing through his path. He stood next to the fireplace, furrowed eyebrows, taut lips and a grim expression as he mulled over his deep thoughts. I wasn't sure whether to speak, but instead moved closer to him, but kept 2 feet apart from us. He finally sighed and turned to me, pain searing in his eyes, and I felt myself tremble on my footing to know I'd caused that. "Stefan," I whispered, and he looked away again. Not standing the distance, I moved closer to him and cautiously placed a hand on his shoulder. "I am so sorry," was all I could think of saying at that moment. Sure, it wouldn't fix all wounds, but it's a start, isn't it? He finally turned to me and I dared myself to cup his face, which surprisingly he leaned into. Then his fingers reached up to gently hold my palm in place. "I knew he felt something for you, and I knew you." Placing a finger to his lips, cut him off, I answered. "I may have felt something for Damon, but it can never compare to how much I love you. Never doubt that, Stefan. Never doubt my love for you." Staring straight into his eyes and hoped he could read the truth in them. "I forgive what you did." I already did before reveling in that unveiled truth. His voice trailed off, suggesting he was going to add something. "Elena, I always doubt your love. That is something you can ask me to do." Opening my mouth to blurt out my apologies, he shook his head, mimicking my movements by placing his finger over my lips. "I doubt your love not just because of Damon, but because of what I am. I am a vampire. That will always be the same and you need to live a long and human life, he stated. Grave eyes bring into mine and I only noticed the salty tears trailing down my cheeks when he reached up to wipe them. I love you, Elena. You accepted me for who I am and I'll always love you, but we don't know what will happen or what you'll decide years from now. You know I wish could I wasn't tij just don I am sorry I see can t that I can t tears helplessly falling with the knowledge of what I was doing to him. It wasn't fair for him to constantly worry over us and have these doubts, but I understood what he meant. I couldn't just drop everything and be a vampire. I had Jenna and I had Jeremy and I didn't want to chance bloodlust, but then the pro was Stefan. He was the only reason I'd change. He continuously shook his head, making me pause with my insane rambling. Don't apologize. I know, he smiled, wiping the tears again. I just wish I began to trail off because I knew he'd wished for that too, his humanity. His arms encased me and I buried my head on his shoulder, allowing his woodsy scent to engulf me as I stood there with my world in my arms. I know I do too, he whispered back. BPOV. Midwinter 1312. Awaking from the deep slumber, I was met with Mother's worried brown eyes. Her coffee brown hair was piled on top of her head, which she usually did when she was exasperated. Bien que vous êtes éveillé, good. You reawake, she smiled down at me and I pushed myself up on the bed. Mama, maiden morning mama, I replied, more cheerful now. Her soup and the rest had helped in some way, although I could still feel the dull ache burning in my chest. Martin. Morning, she questioned with an amused expression before taking my face in her palms to reply. Oh ma chérie, sieste la nuit, oh my darling, it is night. She gave a soft kiss on the tip of my nose. Raising my head, I gazed out the window, surprised when I saw the black night and for once no stars. Something eerie seemed to conceal the night. Standing from the bed, I pushed away the layers of blankets. My feet tingled as I placed them on the coldness of the ground. The plain blackness of the night revealed the large white moon tinted with silver. La pleine lune, a full moon, I sighed. Melancholy rang in my tone. Turning to Mother, I found her looking at her fiddling fingers, the worry more defined in her furrowed eyebrows. Mama. Her head snapped up to me and she masked that worry with a faltering smile. Pas de souci mon enfant, d'un pas, just no worries my child, just happiness, was her reply, but I knew something was wrong. She could never hide from me. Trusting her judgment, I knew she would tell me when she was ready. Oh sont les autres, where are the others? Trying to erase her worries, but it seemed to become more evident. I knew the others had left because it was too quiet. Papa et Alexander sont allés voir Juliana. Leur père n'est pas été pour un certain temps. Papa and Alexander have gone to see Juliana. Their father has not been in for a while, she revealed, and I turned to her. Walking back, the white gown dragging on the floor, so I picked it up before placing myself next to her. Grabbing her hand in mine as I waited for her to continue. Ils veulent voir si ils peuvent aider, they want to see if they can help. Her eyes were so full of sadness and my heart broke as tears brimmed in her eyes, but he quickly wiped them away. Ne vous inquiétez pas ma chérie. Do not worry my darling, she tried to assure me, but we both knew better. For now we would just let that hang in the air. Remembering my two younger sisters, I asked of their whereabouts. Où en est-il Christy et Carrie? What about Christy and Carrie? Endormi sleeping, a wistful expression on her face as she cupped my cheek and I instinctively leaned into her palm, still holding her other hand. Je vous aime Isabelle, I love you Isabelle. Toujours et toujours. Pour la lune et aux étoiles. Forever and always. To the moon and to the stars, hugging her tightly, not wanting to let go. Something was coming, I could see it in her eyes, but whatever it was I would be ready. We would fight it off, I mean who would try and take on a family full of 3 powerful witches? It would be 4, but Christy hasn't realized the potential power she withheld as she was only 7. Bonsoir mon enfant, good night my child, she kissed my forehead, leaving her lips on for a second longer. Something about her kiss settled the danger that was coming. She helped me back into bed and covered me with the blankets before she slowly backed out then and closed the door with a final kiss she blew to me. Once she left, I clambered out of the bed, pushing away the layers and tiptoeing to the window. Grabbing my coat, I wrapped it around me before pushing open the window. Hauling my body up, I pushed myself out of the window, then landed on the ground by kneeling to balance my landing. There was something Mama was not telling me. Looking up from my landing, I was pleased when no one came after me, so I began to run. The earth felt moist on my bare feet as I ran through the forest. My fingers grazed the dampened leaves which soaked my clothes as I continued down the path that led to my dear friend Julian's home. Passing the sounds of the crickets and the hooting of the owls, the cool breeze hit my flushed cheeks with the exhilaration of the run. Getting closer to the house, I could see the bright glow of the fire illuminating the house and hear the rumbling voices within. Once the house was in full view, my run turned into a quiet tiptoe as I made my way towards the open window on the side of the house, my body crouched, not wanting them to hear my arrival. Pressing my body onto the side of the house, my chest rose and my breathing was heavy as I tried to calm myself down and try to hear the voices. Papa, nous devons faire quelque chose. Appelez sur les autres dad, we need to do something. Call on others. Alcander was frantic, wanting to take the action. My worry continued to grow with the urgency of his voice. Mama hadn't told me the truth. Je sais, nous devons penser d'abord avant que nous déclarer la guerre. Nous ne savons pas ce que nous sommes contre. I know. We must think first before we declare war. We do not know what we re up against. My father Isaac always thought logically before taking action. He was never impulsive, always thought carefully. Papa, j'ai toujours suivi vos moyens, mais regardez ces organismes. Écoutez, ils ont déjà déclaré la guerre. Papa, I have always followed your ways, but look at these bodies. Drained. They have already declared war. Alcander argued. Drained. Turning my body, I pulled myself up, holding the sill before looking in the window. My hand rushed to cover my mouth, but it didn't help. Oh mon Dieu, donc tant de sang, oh Dieu, oh God, oh my God. So much blood, oh God. The last word came as a scream as I backed away and tripped backwards, tumbling onto the muddied ground. The door flung open and Papa and Alcander ran out to find me there. Looking up at them, my vision was stained with the pile of bloodied bodies on the ground. My friends. Blood, so much tears helplessly fell down my cheeks, and I felt Alcander's arms wrap around me before he picked me up, and as much as I tried to push the images away, they remained in my mind. Screams rippled through me, ignoring the comfort of Alcander's rocking motion, and my mind called for Juliana. I wanted to hold her, I wanted to help her. I could do it. There was a spell. There had to be. Tearing away from their firm hold, I ran to the house and stopped short in front of the limp bodies. Her lips were parted, but what made me tremble was her icy stare that froze onto me, a fear stuck in her eyes from whatever had killed her. Before I knew what I was doing, I had the limp body in my shaking arms while I stuttered over the words. Cac camantra su suavi latima. C cam camen camantra suavi latima. The words fell through my lips in broken stammers as I screamed to the spirits. Tears continued to fall onto the body that was Juliana's. Isabel. Alcander called to me as he came in, taking in my sight, blood trickling down my nose while I helplessly called to the spirits. Isabel. Metter fin aset. Mettre fin aset. Isabel. Stop this. Stop this, he shouted, pulling me away, but I waved him away, hanging tightly to my friend and shaking my head, but he continued to murmur, "Si est fait, it est done." Realization hit me when I saw the blood splattered onto the walls, the smell of rust in the air, and once again I pulled away from my brother, pushing past my father and running away from it all. Running from their calling of my name and running from the reply of the horror in my mind. Looking down, I found my white sleeping gown was stained with blood. My friend's life was staining my hands, my clothes, my hair. Turning my direction, I ran towards our brook, where we used to jump with Thomas. Never again would we have those memories. Not stopping, I continued down the path, pushing past the shrubbery. My speed increased as I caught sight of the cliff. Even nearing the edge, I continued down the rocky ground. The jagged edges cut through my skin, but I was past caring as I finally jumped, closing my eyes and holding my breath as I hit the surface of the water, which seemed to be like I was crashing through ice. Darkness surrounded me as I sank deeper, but made no move to begin to swim to the surface. I allowed myself to sink deeper, succumbing to the awaiting death. Releasing the breath I was holding, I allowed the water to rush into my lungs, hoping that it'd clear my mind from the terror that I'd witnessed. Before I could close my eyes, I caught sight of something shadowed move in the water, and I froze, in fear. Was it a monster of the sea? I wished for a peaceful death after the images I'd seen. A vicious death would be too much to handle. The shadow moved again and my instincts urged me to safety, but my limbs failed with the numbness created from the freezing waves. It was as if this new danger had reminded me of what I had to live for. Christy, Carrie, Alcander, Papa, and Mama. They needed me and I had to fight for them. Pushing my wasting limbs, I began to urge myself on towards the surface, my strength slowly diminishing with each inch I came close. My lungs were tired with the large intake of the salty water and I could feel my chest ache become more defined as I continued to push myself. My mantra being the names of those I needed to fight for. Looking around to check for the monster of the sea, I saw nothing, all was silent, but I knew it was watching me. I could feel that it was nearby because the back of my hair was standing up from fear. My movements gradually became slower and weaker, and instead of rising, I could feel myself sink again. Trying once more with a groan, I pushed my arms to work harder and my legs to kick faster, but it was no use. Gravity pulled me down and I shook my head, exasperated but defeated. Looking around, I caught sight of the shadow. Squinting, I saw it was closing in on me. Using that adrenaline, I wanted to urge myself on, but my limbs were frozen now, the water numbing every muscle in my body and my eyes closed from the tiredness of my fight. My mind and my heart weakened with the passing second and I sank further, waiting for the looming shadow to release me from the pain. XXXXX. Something warm yet rough touched my forehead and I sighed in contentment. It touched my forehead again and then something was placed against my lips. A warm liquid trailed down my throat and I reveled in the taste of a soup of some sort. Flickering open my eyes, I gave a weak smile as my eyes locked onto the motherly gray ones that stared down at me. Mrs. Flowers. My voice was rough and throaty. Finally you woke up, she sighed. A smile broke through. Isabel, another voice called, and I followed the sound only to find the door was wide open, allowing outsiders a glimpse of the living room. But what caught my attention was Damon, who stood at the doorway, gripping the frame. His eyes lost the urgency and had relief when I locked onto his. He too broke in a faltering smile when I rose my head to certain his appearance. What happened? I hated how the words grated my throat. Damon ignored my question and glared at Mrs. Flowers before growling, "Will you let me in now?" "That's up to her," Mrs. Flowers answered, and then picked up the wet cloth she'd been holding to my forehead, but left the soup and walked into the kitchen, giving us privacy but not before leaving me with a meaningful look. "Isabel, I was so worried about you. We were talking, I should've listened. I was making it worse, I should've listened to you and left like you told me to. I am so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you." He fell onto his knees onto the porch, a defeated expression on his face as his arms limply hang by his side while he stared up at me in desperation. "I am so sorry," he whispered, and I ran to the doorway, kneeling on the other side. I didn't want to let him in yet, and I could see he understood. Flashes of what had happened played in my mind. Me failing and reining in the emotions I felt, the switch falling and then fainting. It had been an emotional overload for me which had caused my unconsciousness, which had brought back the dreams. Dreams of the memories. "Isabel," he sighed, reaching up to touch me, but the barrier stopped him. He continued to stare into my eyes, the silent plea to break the spell, but I couldn't not yet. Seeing him like this was strange. He was lost, scared and broken. He was scared for me, he cared for me, that much was true. I could see it in the panic in his eyes, the defeat in his position. Damon had never looked so weak and it frightened me. "No apologies. I am okay." Giving what I hoped was a reassuring smile before reaching up slowly, mirroring his movements from before and cupping his face. He grabbed my wrist, holding me there, and tears brimming his eyes, and my heart cracked with the emotion he was displaying. He swallowed the lump in his throat before whispering, "I was so scared," he admitted. "I am sorry for scaring you." My thumb stroked his cheek and he let out a small strangled sob. He opened his mouth ready to say something, but he was interrupted with the vibrate of his phone from his pocket. "Answer it," I assured him, and he nodded before shakily pulling out his phone and clearing his throat before answering the phone. His eyes remained on mine as he took in my well-being while answering with an irritated yes. "Damon." Stefan sounded worried. "It's Catherine. She got her revenge." This captured my attention. I didn't think Catherine would be as stupid as to actually take me up on that threat. Pulling away my hand, I stood up, as did Damon. "What do you mean?" he asked, yanking at his hair, and I found myself in front of him now, prying his fingers away from endangering his gorgeous raven locks. He stared at me in surprise that I'd crossed the barrier fully before taking my hand into his. His palm was soft as I joined mine, the electric current was not lost at the mere touch of our skin, and I smiled when his fingers laced with mine, holding me tightly. Catherine, she's been compelling Jenna. She got Jenna to stab herself, Stefan answered, the urgency in his voice, and I could hear him moving around. Jenna, she went after Jenna, really? Because she couldn't face me herself, she goes after someone weaker. Bitch was surely about to pay. Grabbing the phone from Damon, I fought back my anger when questioning Stefan. Is Jenna okay? He sighed over the phone. I gave her some vampire blood and she's gone to the doctors. Thankfully it wasn't her heart. She only got her stomach, he explained in a rambling rush. So she'll be fine. I checked, making sure Catherine hadn't done any permanent damage. Now I felt guilty because I challenged her, but this would help my anger on Catherine, which would surely get her killed. This time, she was not going to get out of this without getting a real taste of my consequences. Yeah, she'll recover, but I know Stefan. I know, sighing with the weighing guilt. My eyes closed in exasperation before I took a deep breath to diarist Stefan, go be with Elena, I instructed, and ended the call. She won't get away with this, I snarled, handing Damon the phone back. We will continue in next part.